Let's do the damn thing.
Oh, you know what time it is. It's time to take it to the Birdland. It's about to go down. Hope y'all ready. Yeah, let's go. Come and roll with me to the Birdland. Friends got to giving you the word, man. Any other BS is absurd, man. Sports talking, they give it to you firsthand. They can talk Terps, they can talk O's. Yeah, they both lit. That's how it goes. Baltimore squad, Ravens and Poe. Better tune in, here gonna show. Birdland, Birdland, Birdland. BS. Birdland, Birdland, Birdland. BS.
It's all about that BS, baby. I'm back.
What's up, BSers? We got almost a full studio in the house tonight, right?
Almost.
Fred, Scott, James, and Drew.
Almost wasn't a show.
Yeah, almost wasn't a show.
My ass had to shortly go into isolation for a little bit.
Fuck all that. Not letting COVID ruin it all for us.
Negative tests are a great thing.
That's right. We got a lot to talk about on tonight's show. The Ravens kicking off OTAs this week, get underway today. Still some questions that need to be answered with the current roster, but fans that are out there freaking out a little bit about certain things today, pump the brakes. We're going to talk a little bit about it.
Yeah, other major news out of the Ravens we're going to talk about as well.
Yeah.
But, hey, guys, he's here.
Finally.
You guys weren't, well, you were there, but it wasn't the day that you thought it was.
Nope.
Adley, top prospect, Adley Rutschman makes his ML debut, and not only Birdland, but MLB is pumped. We'll get into that a little bit later tonight.
Yeah, could have planned for it a little bit better, but you know, it is what it is. I had a lot of fun. Birds are staying hot, man. Picking up a series win versus the Rays, an opening win on the road up in New York against the Yankees. Always feels good to have a Yankee spanky in the first game on a road series against the Yankees. So we're going to talk all about that, and it's fun to watch baseball again.
It is. It's exciting. I'm excited to get into it. But before we get too far, let's give a shout out to our sponsor, Bowers, Hassan, and Herndon. Remember the team over at MD Crash? We've been telling you about them for the last 2 years, guys. I don't know why we have to keep saying this. We've explained it, but they've expanded. They now have more lawyers, and they're handling a much broader spectrum of cases. Still handling all your auto accidents, injuries, and work issues, of course, but now the team at Bowers, Hassan, and Herndon can help you with family law issues from divorce, custody, child support, even criminal charges and traffic tickets. And well, if you like to do some stabbing in your off time, you can help. They can help you out too. But you got to call them now, or text them 667-220-6500 anytime for your needs. Save that number again. Update that MD Crash number. So that number again is 667-220-6500. Again, call or text anytime to get the team at Bowers, Hassan, and Herndon on the case for you. Our new button works.
Yeah. All right, fellas, it's time for some Ravens talk, some flock talk. As I mentioned, OTAs kick off today at the Castle. So we get our first glimpse of some veterans coming back. You know, we got to see Rashad Bateman run out in his new jersey. And I forgot that he had changed his number from 12 to 7.
Can we give a disclaimer and give people one little reminder?
Yeah.
OTAs are voluntary.
That's right. That's the thing people need to keep in perspective here.
Twitter needs to slow the fuck down.
People are freaking out. I saw everybody freaking out because
Say that again.
I said Twitter will never ever slow down and breathe when it comes to Ravens talk.
Yeah, you might want to change the headset because that one, I didn't think that one was working right. Anyway, so yeah.
Oh well.
People are flipping out because Lamar wasn't there. It's the first day of voluntary OTAs. None of this stuff is a necessity. We all know Lamar, and if you're following him on social media, he's putting in the work. He's getting the job done. Whether he's at voluntary OTAs isn't going to make a difference on the year. I know people want to see him working with Rashad Bateman. Well, go back and look at his social media posts. He's out there. He's working with Rashad Bateman. He's putting in that time. So pump the brakes a little bit. I know... I don't know for sure if the contract situation plays into, whether he's there or not. Just knowing Lamar and kind of the way that he has acted with this whole thing, I don't think that's playing a part in it. There are some things, though, that you can take away from OTAs, right? There's definitely some things that I'm going to be watching, some things that I think will kind of tell how this team's going to shake out at least going into preseason, right? I want to see what does the first unit offensive line look like? You know, who lines up at left tackle? Obviously, Ronnie Stanley's not going to be there, right? We don't know who that number 2 left tackle is going to be. Our hopes are Ronnie Stanley will be ready to be able to play first week of the season. But in OTAs, I'm interested to see who might line up there. Same thing with left guard. You know, we talked about the names. We talked about Ben Cleveland. We talked about
Tyree Phillips,
Pat McCarry. I know he's had the back issues and stuff. Who's going to line up at left guard?
Well, and one of the things I think I'm most curious to see. We know what most of this line looked like last year. Most of them are coming back, like you said. But my thing here is, how does Linderbaum play into the scheme? We saw him a little bit in the rookie minicamp, but that's not blending and meshing with the guys that are already there. They barely got into scheming in rookie minicamp.
Right.
You know, we've seen his highlights show in college. He had some good pulls. He was able to get out in front, especially some of those ones where he's able to get to the outside. I saw a great video that was the breakdown that Joe Horitz did with Linderbaum, and kind of breaking down, okay, look at this shot and watch him. You watch him shed a guy and leave him off to the guard and keep on going.
Create the path.
Exactly. And that's the type of stuff that should, and I say should with the big quotes in next to it, it should translate well to this offense and what we plan to do.
I mean, I put $100 down on it with James earlier this
well, we
this
said
month.
he'd be the starter.
He's going to be the starter, in my opinion, day one. So I think you're going to try to get him as much work with the ones as you possibly can. And that starts even in these voluntary OTAs. So I'd like to see him. Now, granted, not all the rookie deals are done yet as far as contracts go. There's only been a couple of contracts that have been signed. So that's the next step. Those contracts need to be signed, get these guys in, get them work. So I'd like to see him with the ones. The other thing I'd kind of like to see is what does this wide receiver core look like, right? That's the one position that wasn't addressed through the draft, wasn't addressed through free agency. We lose Hollywood Brown. I mean, I guess the next in line to be wide receiver 2, you would think would be Devin Duvernay. But we all know, like, when James Prochet has gotten a chance in preseason, he's looked great, right? He's just never really gotten that opportunity in the regular season. Does James Prochet get a little bit more shake? Does he get a little bit more targets his way? Can he work his way into that number 2 role? We'll see. I mean, this is definitely a battle that I want to watch.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting, especially to your point, right? We thought we knew where Prochet and Duvernay would fit into this last year, and it really didn't turn out that way. They didn't get the reps that we were expecting. We were calling for it all year. You really, truly hope that they start to kind of get that. Now, the problem with that is looking at chemistry. If Lamar's not coming to OTAs, again, they're voluntary. Get it.
Yep.
But that's an extra space for him to develop chemistry. We already know he's been working with Rashad. Haven't heard anything of him working with Prochet or Duvernay, so you're hoping that meshes really well. And if it does, then yes, we fully anticipate one of those guys being thrust into more so that number 2 role. We'll even call it a number 3 role, because really wide receiver 1 is Mark Andrews. So when you look at all those things, I think you got to kind of, people need to take a step back, but we also need to see a big jump out of the chemistry with these guys with Lamar and the reps that they're getting. Yeah. They're going to get reps thrown their way, and in all reality, if one of them winds up fumbling, if you will, both figuratively or literally, we could wind up seeing this number 2 spot, this quote number 2 spot, being a giant question mark going into camp.
And it will be, I think, and it's going to be an open competition. I think that's the right way for the Ravens to approach it. They got 3 guys that haven't had a whole lot of opportunity, that are unproven, but they were all drafted wide receivers for a reason, right? And we've seen glimmers of hope with all 3 of them in the preseason. So it's time for somebody to stand out and shine. You can't count out Tylan Wallace either, right? Tylan Wallace, outside of an injury, would have probably been a second-round type wide receiver, right? So he's got a potential. He's got a little bit of a nasty streak to him. He reminds me a little bit of Steve Smith and his aggressiveness, his strength, the way to go up and attack the ball. I like Tylan Wallace, so I'd like to see him get some run too. So that's definitely a position that I'm going to be watching a lot through OTAs, through camp, the entire thing. And then the other position that was obviously a big hampering last year, mainly due to injuries, was cornerback. And we lost a couple of cornerbacks through free agency this year. So I was really intrigued going into OTAs and camp to watch specifically the slot corner position and what this depth is going to look like. And today we got some breaking news. That led at about 1 o'clock today. EDC waving his magic wand, making things happen yet again. Agreeing to terms with veteran cornerback Kyle Fuller on a 1-year deal. This kind of goes in line with what I said leading up to the draft. Was I knew the Ravens would probably target cornerback because they're going to need it for depth, right? But I didn't think it necessarily needed to be a priority in the first, second, or third round because there were plenty of cornerback options still out there on the free agent market. There weren't a ton of options out there on offensive line. There weren't a ton of options out there on elite edge rushers. But cornerback depth and at good price was still out there, right?
Yeah.
So getting a guy like, Fuller, maybe it's not the Fuller that everybody wanted, right? I know everybody out there in the wide receiver world wants Will Fuller, but Kyle Fuller is a guy who's a proven vet. I mean, he's a local guy, former first-round pick from Baltimore, played high school at Mount St. Joe. Actually grew up best friends with Michael Campanaro, former wide receiver, right?
I'm sure they gave Michael a little call. Hey.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. But, I mean, this guy, he's been a top cornerback in the league for a few years. He did have 1 year where he had a knee injury, so he was out for an entire season. But he's been an all-pro guy at 1 year. He was a Pro Bowl guy a couple years. Well, not saying he's going to be that kind of form, but to add that piece this late into free agency to give you that depth and to give you that security because he can play inside or outside.
And we still don't know all the details of the deal, but you got to figure this is a fairly low deal. They're not going to go out and get a guy that's going to be expensive just to add that depth. This became a value piece. That's why it's a 1 year prove it type deal. He's been with He's been with Chicago and he's been with the Denver Broncos. So for him, he's trying to get cash in a big contract. Where better to do that than where cornerbacks go to thrive,
right?
And you have two of the best out there. I think some people do need, we talked earlier about pumping the brakes and some different things with the Ravens flock. This is one I saw a little bit today when it broke. Twitter was kind of like starting to question mark and go off of like, okay, who's hurt? Is it Marlon not going to come back or is Marcus not going to come back? And it's like, pump the brakes, guys. If you came back to me and said, okay, the Ravens signed him on a $10 million deal, anything really above, I'll see anything above 5 for him with this deal. If anything's above 5, then yes, I'm starting to go, okay, they went out and they spent a decent amount of our remaining cap space to get this piece. This can't just be depth.
Yes and no. I mean, $5 million to be a cornerback that is basically cornerback number 3 on this roster day one, right?
Yeah.
Even if things are 100% healthy, he's cornerback 3. $5 million a year is nothing for that. So I don't think $5 million would scare me. If it was 8 or more, yeah, that would scare me. There are ways for the Ravens to finagle the cap number and redo some restructures to make room. So I'm not worried about that. But I think this does give you a little bit of peace of mind. And I think that's what Raven Flock was looking for is I'm not necessarily worried that Peters or Humphrey aren't going to be ready to start the season, but it's nice to have that insurance policy in place that if, God forbid, somebody's not ready, then you do have somebody who's got experience who can play outside as a boundary corner or put him inside as a slot corner. And again, if Marlon's there, we know Marlon can slide inside and he can go outside. It gives you more of an option,
versatility
and versatility with the secondary, which this secondary right now, man, when you start looking at the pieces that they've added, with Kyle Hamilton through the draft, getting Marcus Williams in free agency, now you're picking up Fuller, you're bringing back 2 of the elite cornerbacks and Peters and Humphrey through injury. This is going to be one of the elite secondaries in the league. And I know some people out there are still worried about pass rush and you got to get to the quarterback and you got to get to the quarterback. Having this kind of a secondary fully healthy is going to help us get to the cornerback. Just think back to last year. Justin Houston, when you look at his sack total, didn't put up the numbers I think that we all kind of expected him to put up in his first year with us. But how many times was Justin Houston this close to getting
He had the most quarterback pressures out of anybody on the team.
He was so close to landing so many more sacks throughout the year, right? And this is just one example.
Yeah.
When you have a secondary like this, that gives you that extra time because they're locking down and they're covering and they're doing their jobs, that puts more emphasis on the pass rush, and the pass rush can be more effective because now they have more time to get to the quarterback. So all this plays a part. I know Justin Houston is still in the plans as a potential late ad. You know, that he's under that whatever. I forget what the title of it is.
Oh, it's it's
like a tender.
The tendered undrafted free agent piece, or not undrafted free agent, unrestricted free agent. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think they have the option up until middle of July, where they can counter any offer that he gets or something along those lines. Either way, it sounds like Justin Houston may still be in the fold.
Yeah.
Which is good because again, I think you give him that secondary, you give him that little bit of extra time, and that increases his production.
Well, and one of the things that they did, and I'm going to bounce a little bit here, is obviously the other thing that happened this week, which it's interesting to see Ravens flock split so much on this, is they go and they bring back former defensive lineman for us, Brent Urban, or Brett Urban, which was a vet year, one year vet minimum deal. Mm-hmm. It's not the flash in the pan.
No.
Is it a necessary pickup?
Probably.
And then you have to ask, does it give you the insurance that you need?
Absolutely. And I mean, you start rounding out the depth on this defensive line. I feel a hell of a lot better now after the draft, after reassuring that Calais Campbell's going to be in the fold, getting Matabike and just all these guys. I feel really good. And I think that's also another area that fans aren't accounting for pass rush through the interior. Like getting rid of, Brandon Williams, as much as I respect what Brandon Williams did for us for many years, he did not put any pressure on the quarterback, especially over the last couple of years, right?
No, he was a run stopper.
You're going to get quicker. You're going to get more athletic on that defensive line. Again, with that secondary, that's going to give those interior guys more time to get to the quarterback. So naturally, with this elite level secondary, that pass rush all around, outside edge guys and interior, is going to improve.
Yeah, I think the thing here is this really told us one major thing about this defensive line. Derek Wolfe is not healthy.
No, I really think Derek Wolfe is going to be one of those post-June 1st cuts. At
this point, it's either he comes back and you cut Urban, which, again, the cap hit on that's going to be low, but the Wolfe situation, them going and getting a guy like Urban that is coming in essentially to a new defense. Let's not forget that, right? It's the trust. What it is they trust his ability to pick up whatever defense they're going to lay down, right? And there was definitely input from Harbaugh and some of the other guys that have been around for a while, from EDC to Mike McDonald, saying, hey, if you're going to run this offense, this is a guy we could bring in cheap. He's going to pick up. He's going to be a veteran and a guy that can help some of the other guys on the defensive line.
And he's already been in the system before, so I know it's a new defensive coordinator, but not a whole lot of terminology is going to change.
Very similarly to what you did when you brought in Derek Wolfe.
Yeah.
When you brought in Derek Wolfe, if I remember correctly, came in on a vet minimum 1 year deal or close to it. It wasn't a big deal that they brought him in on, but it
wasn't vet minimum. It was definitely more than vet minimum, but way.
But it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't.
He took less money to come here because he preferred being in Baltimore. He wanted to be in Baltimore.
So maybe that's the same thing with Urban. Maybe Urban came to Baltimore. We don't. That's the problem is we don't know the story here. Were we actively seeking him, or did he seek us out and we said, if you're willing to take this, we'd love to have you.
Yeah. Either way, I'm happy with it. Am I over the moon excited about it? No, but it fills a need, gives us that insurance policy like we talk about, and gives us a little bit more depth on that defensive line. Again, somebody who's been in the system before, who's familiar with it, could come in and be a seamless transition. And he was already out there at OTAs today putting in the work, so it was good to see him, getting adjusted already in day one. So with that, we got to talk about one of the
the big but not unexpected news.
No, it wasn't unexpected, but what was unexpected about it was how it kind of pulled at the heartstrings a little bit more than I expected.
The Ravens media just fucking executes.
They
just execute. It's just as simple as that.
You talk elite level. We're talking the Sam Cook retirement. And the video that the social media team put together, the multiple videos. One, the video that they put together for Sam, and then the video that they put out of Sam watching that video with his family. Man, I tell you, fucking waterworks. It was, I don't know, my sinus.
It was the original.
Allergies were bad or whatever.
It was the original video. It was them showing, the press conference and how they handled all that. Then to your point, it was the more in depth of everybody saying, what they thought of him. And you think about that on the backside. They haven't even put out the video that is just those guys.
Right.
That video that went out was all those guys giving him the credit, saying they're going to miss him and him reacting to it. So there's multiple parts here that you're sitting back going, this This is high media level. There's reasons that the Ravens have won awards for stuff like this and have also been able to keep guys around like a Sam Cook, because this guy, take us back into what they've done over the past 10 seasons with him.
Well, I mean, you talk about what went into this decision, right? This is kind of what we had talked about when the draft decision came. Like we talked about prior to the draft that probably this year or maybe next year, the Ravens were going to have to face that decision of replacing Sam Cook. It was inevitable. You know, he wasn't putting up the stats that he had done in the past. So we knew it was coming. I didn't think it would be this year, but we knew it was coming. But the Ravens ended up making a business decision and, you know, decided to go with a punter that had a chance to be the next great punter for the Ravens for the next 10 plus years. And I thought the Ravens handled it with class, like they do pretty much everything else. They called him prior to the draft to let him know that, you know, hey, we're going to go in another direction. We're going to be probably drafting a punter in this draft. I respect that, and it shows that they respect him because they don't have to do that. You know what I mean? Like they could just go make the draft
doing their
picks
business,
and cut him and let him go, right? But the Ravens respect what he's meant to this organization and what he's done, not just for the Ravens, but what he's done for the game and punters. I mean, he's got punts that are named after him that he's kind of invented in his own way.
The Cook kick.
Yeah, the Cook hook.
Or the Cook hook. That's what it is.
Hook, right. So and now you got punters coming in the league, including, you know, Jordan Stout, who models some of their kicks after things that he's done, right? So he's revolutionized the position. So we talked about it. You said potentially how great would it be if he does go into retirement, but then stay within the organization to be that leader, to be that mentor for a guy with as immense talent that Stout has.
It's almost like they were listening.
Now, I'm sure this plan was well in place before we ever said anything. But either way, it falls right in line, and this is the best case scenario for the Ravens at a position that I think a lot of Ravens fans take for granted. When you think of special teams with the Ravens historically, we are just spoiled fucking rotten. When you think about Matt Stover and Justin Tucker, I mean, the kicker position,
Morgan Cox,
other than 1 year with fucking the Cundiff, the one bad year with the kick that, you know, missed it in the fucking playoffs. Outside of that, like, kicker has never been a problem.
Nope.
Punter has never been a problem. Dave Zassadil, even before, Sam Cook, like, we never had a problem with the kicking positions. So we were very blessed because it's a small part of the game, but plays a large part that I think fans just don't give enough credit to.
It's definitely an important part. And you know, you said this is best case scenario. I think you summed it up when you said it before. It was the perfect situation.
Yeah.
Right. And honestly, I think we haven't heard truly that this was the case. I don't know that some people are like, oh, well, the Ravens forced Cook to retire by drafting. I think Cook gave an indication that, you know, hey, at some point here, I'm getting to the end. He alluded to it a year and a half ago.
He said he's had conversations with his wife about it, knew that this day was going to be coming soon.
Yeah, and so I think he kind of gave the Ravens indication, and they said, look, if we can get this kid, we're sending you off with a bang. We'd love to keep you, kind of thing. If for some reason we can't get him, let's keep you for one more year. Let's find that next stud.
Right.
Right? I'm sure that conversation was happening. I'm sure, to your point, they called him, hey, we're taking him, right? And I'm sure they probably took his input, right? This is the punter that changed the game. God, for God's sakes, the punter that everyone knows in Pat McAfee gave him a fucking shout out right after it happened, right after it went out there. Gave him a shout out, called him one of the best punters to ever do it. He thinks he should go into the Hall of Fame.
Said that he revolutionized the game.
Yeah,
you know?
and somebody that he looked up to and respected, you know, while he was still playing. So all these things kind of just come together, and I think it really just shows you he's valued throughout the league. And to your point, the perfect situation of this kid, Jordan Stout, and Cook said it. This kid could go to the next level. This kid could further revolutionize the kicking game with the help of the greatest possibly to ever do it.
Right. Drew, what's your take on how the Ravens handled this whole situation with Sam Cook and the new punter?
Am I on mute?
Well, I guess you guys did get
Go,
it fixed.
go to him. Go to James.
James, what's your take on Sam Cooke and the way that the Ravens handled the situation?
They handle it well. I would just like to say EDC got in contact with me about this punter that was coming in because, we're Penn State guys. He wanted a little bit of clarity. So he called me and Joe up, and we talked about but class act about Sam Cooke. We talked about it. Like, I love the guy and all, but I could just tell over the last couple of years he was kind of killing us in the kicking game.
Yeah.
But
it really came to a head this last year, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Drew,
last year towards the end, it was starting, but I'm glad they handled it the way it is. I'm happy with it. I'm glad he's still with us, and that's great.
Yeah, best case scenario. Drew, what's your take on it?
Yeah, no groundbreaking opinion, really. I mean, it does go to show, like, you couple that with, like, the Hollywood Brown thing where it was, like, so hush-hush. They you know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't surprise me and that's kind of what it sounded like. Maybe Sam even came to them, like, it might have been, like you said, might have been him coming to them saying, like, hey, I'm going to give you guys one more year, but if you wanted to go and try to replace me now type of thing, and that could have happened in the end of the season, you know what I mean? Like, compared to, having the whole Hollywood Brown thing being, like, months in advance. So, you know what? Proud of everything he's done. Thankful for everything he's done. He's been, like you guys already said, he's one of the best punters to ever fucking do it.
Yeah.
And pretty cool. You get to ride out in the sunset. They give you this good sending off, a tribute. You get to stick around and all this cool stuff. And sounds cool. Hopefully Jordan Stout, hey, you got big shoes to fill.
He does.
Step right on in, boy.
That's the problem, right? We talk about, Kyle Hamilton coming in, and he said, since I've been drafted, I've been asked about Ed Reed about 150 times, right? In the first, 2 days that he's here. That's Jordan Stout is going to have that kind of level of comparisons now with Sam Cooke at the punter position. But, speaking of secondary, right, we talked about that earlier. The other piece that we didn't mention is the piece that we don't know what this situation is going to shake out to be. We're talking about Chuck Clark. We've heard Harbaugh say that as far as he's concerned, he wants him to be a part of the team. He wants him to be a part of this.
He was talking about having all 3 guys out there at one point.
Right. But then we saw the new trendy thing by players he goes on social media and he scrubs all his social media, deactivates his Instagram, scrubs everything off of Twitter. The immature shit that I cannot fucking stand. You see out of Chuck Clark, which I didn't expect out of Chuck Clark. But then you turn that around, and today, mind you, with all this shit going on and all this, is he going to be here? Is he not going to be there? He was at first day of OTAs, right? A player who had all the reason to not be at voluntary training, activities, organized team activities. He had all the excuses not to be there. He shows up.
But that's where I respect the shit out of it, right? Because we know he's been a leader, and that's probably one of the things that frustrated him the most. Whatever happened, however it transpired, we'll never know because we're not privy to those conversations. We don't know what was said to him, what may have made him upset. Maybe he heard something secondhand from somebody out of the front office. Oh yeah, they probably did this to do this. That could have been what set him off.
Right.
And he didn't think to call EDC going, hey, what the fuck, man?
Right.
We don't know. So here's the deal. When you look at this, when you look and you see Chuck Clark there, that should tell the Ravens something.
Yeah.
Right? That should tell you, here's a guy that's ready to go and strap it up and says, I'm gonna fucking earn my keep here.
But that's never been a question about Chuck Clark. Like his work ethic has never been questioned. He's always been a team guy. That's why this whole
when you put a guy,
social media shit just was super surprising.
I agree, but when you put a replacement in front of a potential replacement in front of a guy, you never know how he's going to react. You could do one of things. That guy could shut down and go, fuck this. Or you could actually, for all we know, this could take Chuck Clark to another level.
Right.
He goes and finds another gear. He goes and slims down, whatever. I don't know what it may be, but the whole point is it's the fight or flight, right? That's the kind of mentality that this creates. So it creates a little bit of healthy competition. And I think Chuck Clark brings his value because he does know this defense. He's been the signal caller. He's been a guy that has a high football IQ. And, oh, yeah, that's right. He also originally got his start on this team playing on special teams.
Right.
Guess where I bet you he's probably going to be? In a Levine-type role.
Maybe. Maybe. I mean, there's no doubt that the Ravens defensively can scheme up ways to use 3 safeties on the field as well. I mean, it won't be every down, but he can be out on that field. And there's no guarantees that Kyle Hamilton day one is going to come in, learn the defense, and be ready to go day one as a starting safety. I know he's got all the intangibles, and there's so many things that you can do with him, and that's the hopes. But it might take 3-4 weeks into the year for him to feel comfortable and for the Ravens to feel comfortable with him out there.
We all saw the video of Harbaugh showing him the freaking defensive book.
Right. It's a lot. It's a lot to take. Now, I don't put it past this kid because he seems sharp. He seems smart, and he
Well
seems like
put together, focused.
Right. So I don't put that past him. But my question is with this whole Chuck Clark thing, Jeff Zrebeck of The Athletic reported that Eric DeCosta has spoken to several teams about a potential deal for Chuck Clark. Do you think the Ravens did Chuck dirty by drafting another safety? Or do you think that that's just part of the business?
I think it's a little bit part of the business. I don't think they ever had the intention of fully, parting ways. But we talked about it. Nobody thought Kyle Hamilton was going to be there at 14.
Exactly.
If you don't take what some are anticipating to be one of the top future safeties of the game, if you don't take him and you pass on him and a team behind you gets him and he becomes the best player,
yeah.
Why not have the best player on historically one of the best defenses? It just doesn't make sense.
And to that point, how many times have we looked back on drafts prior, right? Like years prior, and we look back at the draft board and we're like, fuck, we could have taken him, we could have taken him, we would be kicking ourselves about Kyle Hamilton, regardless of Chuck Clark. We'd be kicking ourselves if he lives up to the hype and he is an elite level safety like everybody projects him to be. So to your point, I think you hit the nail on the head. The Ravens didn't expect to get a talent like Kyle Hamilton, but when one falls in your lap like that, you don't pass it up. No. And Chuck Clark and anybody in the NFL needs to realize that this is a business.
Guess what? If you remember back to what EDC said, they originally didn't think Marlon was going to be there.
Right.
They didn't originally think Ronnie Stanley was going to be there. Now, barring from the injuries last year to both of these guys were all pro players.
Absolutely.
Not just Pro Bowl players, but all players and multi-year all pro players. So you just don't do it, and you can't look at this and say the Ravens aren't good at picking out talent, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And Googs, when I said the Levine type role, I meant Levine type on the special teams. I'm not saying he's just going to be a special teams Levine role. He could play that dual dynamic role, which they love the versatility, especially from a guy that's an experienced veteran that can come out and fill in for Kyle at times, but also, hey, you're still going to get your snaps because we need you out there on special teams.
I see what he's saying, because Anthony Levine was literally just a special team specialist.
But as I was saying, I wasn't going that route.
He can definitely fill in that role, but also he would be that third level safety or, guy that you can line up in different positions in the secondary. They'll still use him a lot more in the secondary than they used Anthony Levine, especially late in his career. But Drew, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about this deal, right? So I don't know what kind of value Chuck Clark brings, right? But at this point, if the Ravens are to make a move, what would you like to see in return, or what would you expect to see in return for a player like Chuck Clark?
I mean, there's kind of different wide range of things. I mean, he's the kind of player at this point, and it is. I mean, this is kind of definitely not a knock, but it all depends on what teams will value him. You know what I mean? Obviously, that's the key word anyway.
Right.
But if it can net you a veteran wide receiver, like if there is something where it was like New York, trade him to New York for like Darius Slayton or something like that.
Right.
Something that's going to net you another thing of need, like especially wide receiver, obviously with what we all talk about, something like that would be cool. I mean, even if it's taking something like if he doesn't want to be here and you could take whatever for him, it's better than cutting him, obviously.
Right.
Then you do it because I'll harken back to what you guys were saying. You don't know Kyle Hamilton is going to be there.
Right.
I would feel like he's the kind of guy, like at this point, like you should know, like you said, it's a business. You don't know Kyle Hamilton's going to be there. It's not like you were you jumped up to 5th to get him.
Right. It wasn't you weren't targeting him. He fell in your lap.
Linderbaum there, and then later on you jump back in at 25th or something, and because you didn't jump ahead to get him, and I'd rather have Chuck Clark there because when the draft happened, you were like, oh, cool. We all were thinking like 3 safety sets,
right?
Whatever. Let's see what they could scheme up. But I mean, I like Brandon Stevens. To me, like if those other two guys, Hamilton and Williams. Why am I drawing blank on this? Other
Williams.
Yeah, Williams. Marcus Williams.
Like if those are the two starting safeties, like I like Brandon Stevens. I think he did well having to step up on the blue.
Yeah.
If you told me he went in the training camp and he was training to be a safety and wasn't focusing on whatever else, like that'd be cool. So to me, like if you can go get something like especially a wide receiver for Chuck Clark, I mean, go do it because you do have another player in the reins that you can go out there and he started for you in the past.
I think the thing too, and I know that Donnie is chiming in here, and so is Googs on the dot side of things, right? And the play calling. What we don't know is the experience level and the jumping up. And Googs brings up a good point that you could see Clark maybe move into the box a little bit more and be linebacker-esque at times,
right,
and really play that role while still being the signal caller. We also don't know, maybe there's an evolutionary step for a guy like Owe or whatever. We come back on that middle linebacker front that somebody could come out and really surprise you and say, this guy can be the signal caller and step in. Not saying that if Chuck Clark's out there with his football IQ, 100%, that should be on him. But if you're in situations where you got to go, we've got an abundance of talent. Who do we put out there? Well, guess what I need to do? I need to put out the freshest set of legs out there, and that's not always going to be Chuck Clark. Let's remember, he is getting up there. Some of these guys are younger, more youthful, a little bit more speed. He has the intelligence, which plays it to his strengths, but there's going to be situations where you're going to rather have a different package out there. So they're going to experiment with that at times, and that's where you'll see the other guys come in.
Yeah, I'm really not concerned about the green dot, whether he's out there or not out there. It's still so early. I mean, we just got into the first day of OTAs that somebody will pick up that role and be able to do it. He did. Yeah, right, exactly. I mean? He was thrown in the position. We realized that Patrick Queen wasn't it. He wasn't the guy, right? And we moved on from that, and Chuck Clark's been great at it. We'll find that next guy. And if that means that it ends up being a fucking rookie like Kyle Hamilton, that he just comes in and blows everybody out of the water with his ability to communicate and put people in positions, then good for him as a rookie. But it's so early on that they'll move it around. They'll figure out who's the best fit for that.
Don't discount the idea of a guy like Dalen Hayes coming back and being that type of guy.
Maybe we'll see. We got to get him on the field. He barely played at all as a rookie, so we got to see what he looks like.
But he's had plenty of time. My point with that is he's had plenty of time to look at film and dissect film. So we don't know the football IQ side of things.
If you bring back Justin Houston, you got Odafe Owe out there. He's not even a starter. So
yeah, true.
We'll see. We'll see what happens. I'm not really worried about it. The thing with the trade value, and this is why I brought it up, is he does still have a contract associated with him, right? And it's not a cheap contract. It's not a heavy contract. It's not a cheap contract, right? The market for Chuck Clark is going to be system oriented. What system does he fit in? Because I think the Ravens value Chuck Clark in a little bit more than most teams would because of his fit in this defense, right? Doesn't necessarily work in every other team's defense. He's not a game changer. I think he can be an added piece to a lot of rosters, but I just don't think the value's there that a lot of fans are going to hope for, especially with that kind of contract that a team's going to have to pick up. So if you get a 4th round pick for him, I think you jump on that, right? 4th or even 5th round pick, you jump on that to get rid of the salary and to pick up another draft pick. If, to your point, if somehow you can land, a Slayton from New York or, a good wide receiver that would give you that down the field threat through a trade, yeah, you entertain that too. But we'll see what happens with it. I still hope Chuck Clark is here long term. I think that the added depth back there just helps even more. We talked about, the insurance policy and all that stuff. And again, the 3 safety formations I think can work in this defense.
Sometimes players, if they take a step back, they think rationally about it. The grass isn't always greener on the other side.
Right.
Like you realize, like you just said, you might fit here, but you might only fit on 3 other teams. And do you want to go play for those 3 other teams, or do you want to play where you're loved, you're appreciated, and where hey, this works for me.
Right.
You'd rather just stick with that.
I'll tell you one team I think that would jump on him. The Giants.
Yeah, that's what I was just saying. If you get a player like Slayton in a trade with the Giants, I think it would make sense.
You got to think about that too. Who's up in New York now? Wink.
Yeah,
Wink's up there. Wink knows him. He knows what he can do. He knows how to play Wink's style of football. That regardless of whether it's Slayton or not, my whole point is he's gonna go somewhere where he's comfortable. And if the word is on the street that, hey, Chuck's available, I'm sure Wink is in the ear up there going, hey, veteran experience, we need it.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't they? So not just even the Slayton idea, but I'm throwing it out there as the fact that it's somebody he's comfortable with.
I like it. Well, we do this podcast.
I don't like it, but I'll say it.
I'm okay with it, especially if it gets a piece like Slayton back. We do this podcast every week, right? And I am a fan of podcasts. I've grown my podcast list. And one of those things I just added to the list over the last couple of weeks is the Studio 44 podcast that Marlon Humphrey is now doing with the Ravens. He had the other one with, it was him and Ronnie Stanley, Guru and Fruit Punch or whatever it's called. But this one, he had on Rashad Bateman, and it's a really good listen. It gives you a little bit. Rashad Bateman's been kind of a mystery to me. He's been really quiet since he's been drafted. He doesn't say a whole lot in the media. You don't hear much from him.
He's well-spoken.
He is very well-spoken, but some of his like mannerisms and stuff when he was drafted, just like Kyle Hamilton, when he got drafted, we're like, Jesus Christ, he looks pissed off that he got drafted by the Ravens, right? You take that stuff and you internalize it. Rashad Bateman, I mean, yeah, he got excited, and he had some like social media videos that he had on YouTube and stuff, but you didn't hear like how excited he was about being in Baltimore. You didn't hear any of that stuff. Well, in this, he opens up a little bit, and Marlon kind of digs into some questions, and one of the main questions that he asked him was his reaction to the draft day trade of Hollywood Brown, and I loved his response. His response was, it's my time. No disrespect to Hollywood Brown, but it's my time. That's the kind of attitude, and that's what you want out of a true wide receiver number one. You want somebody who is going to take it all on, take on that responsibility, because he also, in the interview, talked a lot about how he's got to now step up and be the leader in that room, right? Like, it's his second year in the league.
He's not shying from it.
And he's not shying away from it. He understands that, like, hey, if I'm going to be that guy, I got to take it all in, right? And that goes to show where his mindset is with this entire thing. And I like that about it. And I like that about him. So that gets me excited about Rashad Bateman. And we saw him putting in work with Lamar Jackson. So all of that stuff, to me, is going to bode well, I think, for a big year for Rashad Bateman.
I think that I agree. That's the one thing that I took out of that podcast was the fact that he was so well put together. He had, and obviously there's preparation in an interview, but like he was, boom, like not a hesitation in his voice.
Yep.
It's my time. I was like, let's fucking go.
Yeah.
Like
exactly.
this guy has the potential. And this just tells you the ceiling that this kid has, that he can come in and year two have the confidence, not cockiness, the confidence to say, you handed me the reins, I'm going to fucking take them.
Right.
Let's go.
And that's what you want to see. That's what you want to hear, because in your mind, all you've heard is like, oh, wide receivers don't want to play here, and wide receivers are upset with the offensive system and all that stuff. You didn't hear that one iota from him. It was, I'm wide receiver one now. I'm going to take on all the full responsibility of that. I'm going to lead the charge and lead the way for this wide receiver core. I love that.
The other thing this tells me, I'm fucking excited to see the chemistry between him and Lamar.
Me too.
That the fact that he's got that hunger. Guess who else has that hunger? The guy that's going to be feeding him the fucking ball.
Yeah. He's going to be able to stay on his 2 feet a little bit longer now with a bigger offensive line.
You guys made your early predictions last week on the schedule.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw out my early prediction, and it's that this year, Mark Andrews is not the top receiver on this squad.
Catches, yards, both.
Both.
So you think Rashad Bateman leaps Mark Andrews, who had over 100 catches and who had over 1,200 yards receiving?
I think they're both going to be over 1,000 yards.
Wow. That's a large jump.
I said it was an early prediction, but I'm sitting here.
He's passing you the weed over here.
Yeah, right. We got that button somewhere. Yeah. But no, the confidence.
I like it.
We never heard that confidence out of Hollywood. Even despite the comfortability level between the two of them.
Yeah. I mean, historically, Lamar locks into two guys. That's what his history in the league tells you. You know Mark Andrews is going to be number one. Well, his number two was Hollywood Brown, and he was another guy who had 100 catches last year and another guy who had over 1,000 yards. Or did he have 100 catches? Yeah, he might not have had 100 catches. He had 1,000 yards, just over 1,000 yards, but not 100 catches. So
was
Rashad
just short
Bateman
if he
should
didn't.
be the guy to replace that production. We'll see. I mean, if he finishes over the 100 catches and over 1,000 yards, that's a very successful year in year 2 for Bateman. Go.
I mean, it's enough to your point. It's enough that like if LJ didn't miss the last 6 games,
right.
you know what I mean? Hollywood was on that trajectory that probably maybe Mark Andrews' number doesn't get to where it gets. They get almost more neck and neck.
That's true.
So you're kind of thinking like if the things go the way they were going. And, I was about to say LeBron. Lamar plays 17 games. Obviously, like you just said, if that's like even though your number 2 target, that's your top receiver, it's well within reach that he would have 100 and 1,000.
So Chuck's bringing up the question. He said, would you take the under or over for the top receiver having 80 receptions? It sounds like
Over.
Scott's on the over, easy on that one. So he's saying receiver, taking out Mark Andrews as a tight end.
It'll be
receiver.
over.
So you're
I want to say Hollywood. Maybe Drew or James can look it up for us real quick.
Can I give you a push on that? I think he's gonna hit 80 like right on the fucking mark.
What did Hollywood have last year? I thought Hollywood had close to 90 last year.
I don't know exactly how many catches he had. I know it wasn't over 100 because Mark Andrews is the only one on the team that had over 100. But
all I'm saying, there's one football, and with Andrews and 3 to 4 tight end sets, and Duvernay and Prochet.
So you think they're going to spread the ball around more than hyper-focus on 2 guys?
But they also said they're going to go back to what they do best
and
run the ball.
So that's the other factor. I really do believe that they're going to be running the ball a lot more and a lot more efficient this year than they did last year. So
they're talking about what's his face getting respect. The other running back,
you're talking about
Gus Edwards.
Gus Edwards now coming up. He needs to get the respect because he averaged like 5.3.
Yeah.
An average.
That's what I'm saying. I really believe if they get both of those bell cows back and they're both healthy week 1, you're going to see more of a 2019 offense. You might not even see Lamar Jackson throw for 4,000 yards. You might see him throw for 3,500 to 3,800 yards. And I'd be okay with that if you're dominating teams like you were a couple years ago with the run game. I mean, it wasn't that they were just the best team in the NFL that year running the football. They were historically the best team the NFL had ever seen running the football,
and then
right?
You throw Mike Davis in there, you never know.
No, Jesus.
Fuck you.
No.
What were you going to say, Drew?
91 catches for Hollywood.
Okay.
91 catches. Okay, so
and
it's not too far off
Mark
base.
Andrews had like 105 or something like that, 107, somewhere running there.
So
Now,
we'll have to note that down and come back to
like
it.
12 catches for like 40 yards in the Packers game, but
True. But speaking of podcasts, right, another one that I picked up on, and the only reason I picked up on this one was because Joe Burrow was on it.
Oh, yeah, that was great.
Right, so if you didn't see this, he did an interview on the Full Send podcast, which I had never heard of the Full Send podcast. I didn't know what it was. No. That's what I say. Like, I'm just like starting to get into certain things with podcasting.
Like Full Send, Bussing with the Boys.
Well, I know Bussing with the Boys, and I know like the I Am Athlete and the Pivot and all that stuff.
I listen to stuff like Crime and Sports and Small Town Murder. But
yeah, I haven't gotten into that yet.
And wrestling podcasts.
But this one, it's actually got Bob, what's his name? Bob Menery, the guy that does all like the voiceovers with the funny like sports announcer guy. He's hilarious.
He used to do a lot of the old blooper like commentary stuff.
Right. But they had Joe Burrow on, who Joe Burrow doesn't do a whole lot of media anything, right? And I've always said, even we got spanked by the Bengals last year twice. Prior to that, I always said I kind of liked Joe Burrow. I liked his confidence. I liked the way he carried himself. And the couple times I'd heard him talk, I actually really liked him. And I listened to this entire interview. I know social media cut out, obviously, the one clip where he talks about the Ravens and him like loving the Ravens, loving the players, that they talk crap, right? And he's like, I don't start the trash talk, but if you talk trash, I can talk it back. He's like, I put up 500 plus one game. I put 400 and something plus the net, another game against them. So I like that because that's, when you start talking about all these older players transitioning on, the Ray Lewises, the Ed Reeds, all the guys from Pittsburgh and all that stuff, the AFC North, I don't want to say it's gotten soft, but like the rivalries have gotten a little soft, right?
Yeah, 100%.
It's not football. What it was 10, 15 years ago. It's not. The AFC North is not
games
built
over the past
way.
5 years, those games have not been as many prime times games as they used to be.
It just doesn't have the hype behind it like it used to.
Yeah.
And Joe Burrow and what the Bengals are doing have that potential to spark a new rivalry. Years
100%.
ago, it was us and the Titans. Then it went to us and the Steelers for a very long time. And the Steelers thing won't ever go away. That'll always be there. It doesn't have the oomph to it that it once had. And I think
it doesn't have the grit and the dirtiness behind it that even though we got spanked, those games were fucking tough. Those were big hits in those games on both sides of the ball. Like, you can't deny any of that stuff. And I think that's kind of what you're going at. You don't have up until here this past year, you didn't have that, like, head-to-head matchup that when I think of rivalry, I think of the old. Do you remember the old intro where it was the two fucking helmets coming together and crashing?
Lightning bolt.
Yeah. That's what I think of when you're thinking of rivalry. It's that hard-hitting game that you almost feel like you could see the sparks flying when they're hitting each other.
Yeah. I mean, every game that we played against the Steelers for a year was like 13-12, 10-9. Like, everything was like a
3-point game.
3 or less point game. And that's what you miss, right? Well, I don't think we're ever going to be that 10-9 with the Bengals. These Bengals are built to put points on the board, right? Yeah. But what the Bengals did to us last year was complete embarrassment. Now, granted, it was with a very depleted roster from the Ravens, right? But don't think that the Ravens, Marlon Humphrey, Marcus Peters,
don't think
these
they
guys,
hear this podcast.
Even if they weren't on the field, we're still festering over this, right? Again, it's a division rival. This is a team that went from 4 wins to the Super Bowl in 1 year, right?
Yep.
The Ravens have been on top for a long time, and the Bengals have been on the bottom for a long time. The Ravens don't want to see that flip-flop or change anytime soon. So I think this matchup has a very, very good potential for being the next Ravens-Titans, Ravens-Steelers. Now it be Ravens-Bengals. And it's going to be exciting to watch, man.
And it makes it even better because it is in conference, and it's going to be that fight for the North, right? That's what we're fully anticipating. That's why the Ravens and the Steelers had went at it for so long, because it was always a fight to the for the North between the two of them.
Right.
It came down to who the fuck's going to make it this year. Who's going to make the wild card this year?
Right.
Because the other one's going to kick your ass.
Right.
You know, and that's what it was.
What do you got, James?
All I know is if the game 1 against Cincinnati, I'm playing that fucking clip, the whole locker room of that game.
Exactly.
Because he was like, yeah, I like playing the Ravens, you know, they like to talk a lot of. So, I don't start it, but when it starts going, I'll give it back, and I threw for 500-some yards and blah blah blah. So,
but I liked it, man.
I know I liked it too, and that's why I sent it in the group. I was like, if I'm the Ravens, I'm playing that on repeat
100%.
all fucking morning.
100%.
And you saw who he claimed was the best trash talker.
Yeah, it was actually Matt Judon, because
Raven.
he played Matt Judon in his rookie year, because he only got a chance to play the Ravens once before he went down with an injury. And he said Matt Judon wasn't even anywhere near the play, and yet he was still talking. He just keeps going. He keeps going. He said he is the best trash talker in the league, right? So this has started. I mean, this has been festering with Burrow for a couple of years now, right? And he feels like he's got the upper hand now.
Well, the Ravens were the one that took him out. Right?
No.
Was it the game
They got
after
hurt
that?
against like the Jaguars?
Yeah, it's Jaguars. Yep. But either way, he's been festering over that, and then he got his due against us last year twice. I mean, he beat us pretty bad. So I'm excited for this rivalry. We got the one game that's going to be on prime time at the bank. That's going to be probably one of the most entertaining games this year at the stadium. So I'm super excited for it. I love Joe Burrow's personality. Even if he's not, like, he's on the enemy and all that stuff, I love his personality. I love the fact that he's very subtle, but he takes significant jabs. You know what I'm saying? Like, he doesn't just throw a whole bunch of punches, but the punches that he takes are significant. I like it.
He's bowl hangover.
We'll see.
Go ahead. All right, good.
All right, James, it's time for a social media shout out. Who's been in the chat room? Who's chiming it up?
It's been little but long messages from everybody, but we have our number one was Chuck Summer, then Craig Zero, John Gooks. About time to see Gooks. We got some trash talk to get with you. Flock Nation, Jacob Paul. We got Vinny, John Burris, Admid, Ryan Shamwell was in the room.
I saw that.
He has a little free time.
He's at home with the girls tonight by himself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Troy H, and Donnie Myers, and Kamal Porter. So it's all been, chatting it up, and we've been talking about some good stuff, and, Gooks had to do some catch-up work here. So.
Oh, Gooks said it was the Skins that tore his knee. That's right. It was the Skins. It wasn't the Jaguars. Good point, Gooks. All right, man. So, every week we've been trying to talk a little bit about a different beer that we're trying and whatnot. So, I'm not usually a big natural light guy, right? But I did like the Natter Days that they put out last year.
Strawberry lemonade.
The strawberry lemonade one. Looks like you got a new one there. What's that?
Yeah, this is the new one. They just came out. It's called Red, White, and Blueberry lemonade, just in time for the summer. It's actually really good. Drew's over there. Drew had a cold one.
Man, Natter Days are the best. I'm starting to really fall in love with Natter Days. They need to just keep coming out with these. This one's really delicious.
Did you try this one yet?
I haven't tried it yet because it's warm. I'm gonna let that.
I put mine in the freezer for 10 minutes. See, I put mine in the freezer for like 10 minutes. Hit the right spot. I didn't let it explode or anything like that.
A beer is a fucking beer.
Hey,
is a fucking beer.
I've got plenty of them. And listen, I think I've talked about this
You've
now
been
for
on
2
this
weeks.
I don't think I have any left.
No,
now.
you don't. I took the last one. You're welcome.
I got one.
This Florida seltzer, pineapple mango. I'm telling you, it's where it's at. I haven't had it yet today, but I'm going to have it today. And then, of course, I've got the Land Shark, which is
Classic.
Jimmy Buffett's, I think, beer, right?
Yep.
In Margaritaville.
Yep.
Similar to like Corona type thing.
It's like I always.
If you haven't had a Land Shark, you haven't drank beer.
I always explain Land Shark as a mixture between Corona and Bud Light. Like that's the way that I look at it. It's not bad. You can pound a few of them back. If you're on the beach, it's a good one to have on the beach. It's delicious. Throw a lime in it. You're
right.
good.
All right, fellas. It's time for some Bros, Bows, and O's. And it's been exciting couple of days down at the yard. Team now 18-25 overall after winning 4 of their last 5 games.
Yeah.
Perspective. Team was 18-37 last year. So they're sitting right now with 12 less games with the same amount of wins. Perspective on where they're at as a team. Mind you, they've also had one of the toughest schedules in MLB to start the season.
Yeah.
So they're on a better pace at 12 games less with a tougher schedule, winning the same amount of games.
Well, and you talked about winning 4 of the last 5, 3 walk-off wins in 4 games.
Yeah, unreal. I don't think I've ever seen that
After getting swept in Detroit, by the way.
Yeah, that was the series that I think everybody was kind of like, what the fuck? You're going up against Detroit. It's one of the worst teams. But, again, perspective.
No Mountcastle, no Hayes.
Exactly. That's when we got hit with a rash of injuries. And that just goes to show you, like, we need some depth, right? We need some pieces behind these guys, and it's coming. And we're starting to finally see these chips fall. The big one.
They haven't been losing by much.
They haven't. I mean, they take 2 for 3 over the Rays this weekend, which, mind you, they were 1-18 versus the Rays overall last season. Had actually lost 15 straight to the Rays prior to Friday night. So they're doing a much better job against not just the Rays, but the AL East overall. Because, again, they win their first game last night on the road against the Yankees. So this, to me, this team is exceeding expectations quarter 1 through the year so far.
Dealing with some tough cards. You talked about those injuries, and we saw Spencer Watkins go down as well in this series.
Yeah.
106-mile-an-hour liner to the freaking forearm.
Yeah.
Did you see the fucking welt
did.
on his?
I did.
They pulled away, and I was like, oh shit! And then they put him on the injured list, obviously with a contusion. I was surprised as hell that wasn't coming back as a broken arm or a fracture.
Yeah. It looked pretty bad.
It looked pretty rough. But the one thing I did want to ask about this, and this is something that kind of old school me, it bothers me.
Okay.
Because I see it more often, and maybe it can be contributed to the rash of injuries we've seen with pitchers around the league over the past several years with liners. I notice a lot of guys don't come off anymore how all of us were taught. When you come off the mound, you come off ready to field your position.
Yeah, you're talking about everybody kind of fading off the mound.
Everybody fading off the mound, having their body completely turned. And in a game nowadays, I get it. You're trying to get the velocity. But in a game where shit's coming off the bat at 106 miles an hour now back at your ass instead of 90 miles an hour back at your ass.
Be ready for it.
You got to be ready for it. And we saw these rash of injuries. It all started. You think back, it all started with a guy that was wearing number 35, not the number 35 that we're going to be talking about here in a minute.
God, that's a whole nother fucking story.
But that whole thing,
I kept that out of the outline for a reason.
But that whole thing, like that is one of those things that's where I remember it really started to kind of gain momentum. That it was like, this guy's injured. This guy. It's like multiple guys every year are taking these shots back up the middle. Some of them get lucky. Some of them get lucky and are able to snag the ball or whatever. but they're not coming off ready to field a position. Just me, or just a game evolving?
I agree with you. I think most pitchers are rearing back a little bit more than they were in the past to get a little extra velocity, because velocity equals outs, it equals strikes, it equals swings and
Velocity
misses.
also means further back or harder back at you.
Right, but I'll be honest with you. At 106 mile an hour off the bat, I don't give a shit if you're standing straight, if you're coming off the mound at an angle. You're going to have a hard time fielding, and you're going to have a hard time putting your glove up in time to field it regardless of your positioning when it comes at you that hard.
Fair enough.
I'm not saying that it's not a problem and that teams don't need to address it, because I do think they do.
Just something I noticed, because it feels like, especially for the Orioles the past few years, we've seen it happen a few times. And so it's like, okay, what happened to coming off and fielding your position? So that was just a thought.
I think a little bit to that too could be that a lot more emphasis is placed seemingly on the technique that pitchers have, keeping that repetition of doing.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever wind up emotion you have, if that fits your mold and works for you to not be ready to field your position and to keep that repeating over and over, like, it's just kind of how it is with.
I get it.
Analytics.
That's why I said, is it the evolution of the game, and it's.
I agree with you to a point that that's how you would want it to be.
It's an art form. It's the pitcher's Gold Glove is an art form that's kind of like gone away almost.
But also, kind of like Fred said, like, one way or the other, this ball's coming at you 106 miles an hour. Like,
it's gonna be hard to get that glove up.
You got to have instincts one way or the other.
Right. So, Mr. Yuri, appreciate you chiming in, man. See him out on Twitter all the time. He says the Orioles team has been chippy, been a fun watch. Glad I started watching again this year. And I feel like that's what we're starting to see with a lot of the Orioles fan base. You know, we know all the pieces that are coming, and it was just a matter of when do the floodgates open? When does the first big name get here? We saw Kyle Bradish come up here, and for us that are diehards and knew that he was coming through the system and a guy that we've been watching for a while, we got super excited about Bradish. But the big name that the casual fans even know, right? Adley Rutschman finally gets the call.
How was the game last Monday?
It was great.
It was great.
Hey, man,
we went there to see
We had a
Dad.
good time.
We went there to see Dad.
We got our home run chains down at the yard.
I gotta thank Fred for my home run chances. I couldn't be there. He gets me.
We got our chains. Now, we had a good time. So, yes, we did miss the Adley Rutschman debut that night. We thought it would be that night, but I knew it was going to eventually happen. Whether it was a couple days from now, a couple weeks from now, it was going to happen.
I did say to please wait until I came back, and technically I was back.
You were back, but you didn't make it.
No, I didn't make it.
But I did, man. I went down to the yard, and it was a hot night. It was a muggy night out there, but it was really cool, man. It's really cool to watch somebody like that, right, who's worked his entire life to get where he's at, right? And I mean, his entire family is the epitome of a worker's family, right? Like, they've put him through everything, all the training, all the coaching that they could possibly put him through from youth level all the way up through high school.
Top-tier family.
Done everything, right? And it finally pays off, and you see it. I saw it firsthand. I was sitting about 7 rows behind the dugout. And I know there's videos out there now of it that you can see, but I saw it in person where he walks out for the first time.
You sent us
as
this video.
as a catcher, and you see him for a second just take a pace around home plate and looking around at him, just kind of soaking it all in. Like, wow, I'm fucking here. Like, I made it. I'm here. It's finally happening, right? It was a really cool moment.
One little piece of that kind of people don't pay attention. If you watch the broadcast version of it, not only does he do that, right, but he gets down in that position, and you just kind of. You watch him take a deep breath and drop his head and go, this is it. Like, you can imagine the thoughts running through his mind. That thing that, we all as kids thought about as we were playing wiffle ball with our friends or we're playing baseball or whatever. Yeah. It was that, I want to be in the big leagues one day. And for him, that emotion to kind of see that and to be not only just that, but to be the leader on the field.
Yeah. And, to go out there in his first game, catch his buddy and Kyle Bradish, the other young piece, right? All the pieces just kind of lined up with it. Bradish had a little bit of a rough game, getting beat by the long ball again in this game by what's his name?
Rosarena.
Rosarena twice in that game. Still looks good. I mean, he's still got pretty good command of the strike zone. Just sometimes he leaves that ball a little out over the plate. And when you got professional hitters like this up here, they're going to make you pay. So he'll work through that and he'll get better with it. But just a moment, again, to have him out there with a guy that, he kind of worked his way up through the system with, to catch him in his first game. Then, the entire night you're out there, everybody's standing on their feet every time he comes to the plate. Everybody's got their phones out waiting to see his first hit, right? Goes up there the first time, he strikes out. He goes up there the second time, he walks. He goes up there for the third time, and he finally gets his first hit. And to go on a triple, really a double that should have been a double, but turned into a triple, it's just cool, man. I've been there now for Markakis, I've been there for Wieters, I've been there for Machado, I've now been there for Adley, and there was something extra with this one. I don't know why.
You talk about like stars aligning, right? He becomes the third Orioles prospect to come up and make his debut, and in his debut and get his first hit, and it be a triple.
Yeah.
Manny and Wieters was the same thing. Another piece, Wieters, it was his birthday.
Yeah. Unreal.
Right?
The parallels with all this shit's just
all
crazy.
the cogs aligning here. It was crazy. I didn't get the chance to be there, dealing with a lot of jet lag and coming back from where I was in Vegas. But just to see everything, a lot of the parallels, to see the fans in attendance. Look, I know it wasn't a sellout. There was a decent amount of fans there compared to some other games that we've seen here recently. To see, I think they said the attendance was like 20,000 or something like that, 25.
Yeah, and
somewhere in there.
this just comes. That was the only thing that was frustrating about the whole thing was the planning of it, right? I mean, you didn't know until 8:30 in the morning on Saturday that he was getting the call, which, mind you, they had the Preakness to compete with. Which is obviously drawing a good bit of fans. You've got Wine in the Woods going on in Columbia, which also draws a good bit of fans, some that we personally know. You got all these things going on around town that are drawing away from it. So, yeah, it didn't get the exact turnout that you would expect. But let me tell you, there wasn't a single fan in that stands that night that didn't understand the moment, didn't understand the situation. So, yeah, it might have only been 19,000 fans there, but those 19,000 fans were the passionate fans, the ones that were excited that this is finally happening, and you felt that energy in the stadium, even if it was only half full.
You could see it, you could hear it on TV, and here's the other thing I'm just going to throw at you, right? I get the marketing, 100% agree. I know we were all talking about this in our chat. Drew, you were saying it too. Like the marketing behind this was a little on the poor side, to say the least.
Yeah.
What if I told you to think about it from a strategic standpoint?
Okay, lay it out.
Half capacity, in theory, right? It's still more than what he's used to. Mm-hmm. The pressure is off a little bit because it's not a completely packed stadium. I understand there's other things going on. I'm just thinking strategically, it draws people in over time. They weren't going to get him, but they weren't going to get fans from, even if you market it, it wasn't going to happen. Preakness and the Wine Festival. You can't outbid those with the Orioles. The people that were there were the people that we said should be there.
No, I agree with
the passionate ones. So you got the fact that you got 20,000 fans out there when the past 2 days before that, I want to say it was like 10 or 12.
Yeah, it was pretty low.
It was low. It was probably even lower than 10 or 12. But even still, the fact that you got 20,000 fans out there and they were loud.
Yeah, they were. That's what I'm saying. The passion was there. From a marketing standpoint, listen, this regime has done everything that they possibly can to save a dollar. We all know all the cuts and shit that they've made in areas that I'm like, what the fuck are you making cuts there for? It's always been about the dollar. Here is a position and a player that you can maximize the dollar by getting it on a day that makes sense for everybody. So that was my only thing. It is what it is. It's done and it's over with. I'm happy that I was there to be able to experience it and have a great seat to be able to do that.
The other people my whole point with that was the other people that you would want there were already tied up in two other things.
Yeah.
Right. It just wasn't going to happen regardless of bringing them on. But I think the other thing too is you got to look, and now what are they doing? June 3rd, right? So not this Friday, but the following Friday, they announced they're doing a shirt, first 15,000 fans.
Yeah, that'll draw. Everybody loves a fucking free T-shirt. That'll draw.
Here's the deal. That's going to draw 35,000.
They never fit me.
That's going to draw 35,000 because there's not a lot going on. People are going to want to see Adley, and people are going to want to get that shirt because it's the Adley Rutschman welcome to the show. It just screams like, I want this. I need this.
Right.
Just like it screened for some people to get 10 of the damn tickets.
Well,
that
that's
they
what I was
gave
going to say.
away.
One of the cool things that they did do, if you weren't aware, is that obviously it's a day and age that everything is virtual tickets now. You've got the tickets on the digital on your phone and whatnot. At the end of the game, after the 7th inning, they were passing out physical tickets at the gate as you were leaving, just to kind of commemorate the day and actually have something to take home if you want to get it signed or framed or whatever.
The 40,000 were there then.
Yeah, exactly. So everybody will have a ticket that says they were there that day when there was only 20,000 people there. But either way, I thought it was kind of cool. I got my ticket. But, a couple other things that I noticed that I really liked about, that I really appreciate about Adley, right, is he actually has, and, I had similar mannerisms in the sense that, like, after an inning, I would always talk to my pitcher about what they did right, what they did wrong, all that stuff. And this guy has done that since he was a little league kid, and he's still doing it. I'm just saying.
Wait for it.
I'm just saying,
Wait
Drew.
for it. Go ahead, Drew. Go ahead.
Sorry, I played left field. I don't get put myself in the guys' shoes.
I talked to the guys at the fan throwing the ball.
I'm just saying there are certain mannerisms that
What's up, Don?
I appreciate, man. And to see him do that, because I always wondered, when I saw him do it at Oregon State, and then when he got drafted, I saw him doing it in the minor leagues. I'm like, I wonder if like this is still going to be who he is at the major league level. And you saw it last night when he's getting up, fired up with Perez, shutting the door down and the Rays and extras on Sunday. That was awesome to me. Like, I love that. That's where the fucking fun of the game, and that's where the kid in you comes out, and he's doing it at the major league level.
And it's not even just him. Like, to that point, Trey Mancini was interviewed about Mountcastle coming back, about Hayes being back, and about Adley coming up, and he said he literally said, this is the most fun I have had in my career so far. We're just having, and it just tells you the passion that this team has, and Adley provides the next level of excitement. And Elias actually talked about this during the broadcast. He basically said, look, Adley is a type of talent that comes along once every 5+ years.
Yeah, I don't even know if it's every 5+ when you look at, especially the catching position.
And he then went a step further and saying the catchers are a lot harder. But he was saying from an MLB level perspective, it's a lot
only
harder.
one Fred Donahue who comes around every 4 years.
Yeah, right. There's enough space between us. We're good.
Out for the Diamondbacks, right?
But no, I think one of the things that you got to look at is he's a kid that already you're seeing it. You mentioned some of the mannerisms.
Yeah.
Here's the deal. Second at bat, the patience to take that high fastball.
Oh, that's the thing, man.
It looked like a fat pitch, and he takes the high fastball.
He's got one of the best batter's eyes I've seen in a long time. Like, even though his average doesn't say like he's hitting very well in his first 4 games, he's had all good at bats. Like, I guess he had, I think, 2 strikeouts so far. One was his first time against Garrett Cole, who was throwing 99 mile an hour. That's going to happen in your first at bat.
Bats against Cole last night. It was like the one was like 12 pitches.
Right. Yeah. He's working the count. That's my point. Is that
he's working the count.
He's patient,
and you can see what he does. Right. So on his first 2 strikes, he's very selective. He looks for a ball to drive. And if the ball isn't there and it's not a ball that he feels he can drive, he'll take a strike. If it's on the inside corner of the plate, the outside of the corner of the plate, low and away, if he feels like he can't drive it, he'll take that strike, and then he'll shorten his swing with 2 strikes and do exactly what you're just saying. Foul pitches off, do what he needs to do to extend in a bat. That's a professional hitter. The average will come along with it.
To that,
go ahead, James.
But also, I don't know if you saw when he got that triple.
Yeah.
I didn't like the way his leg rolled when you hit that ball. It could cause some damage later on.
Forgot about that.
If you looked at the highlight, that's the first thing I looked at. I was like, that roll of the foot's going to get him in trouble.
Right. I gotta watch his ankles.
This is
so here's what I'm going to tell you. Go ahead. Go.
Scott
all right,
misses 1 week.
So here's what I'm going to tell you. Tell me he wasn't off balance with that hit.
He looked good for me to get the third.
He got the third.
With the swing, tell me he wasn't off balance.
I didn't pay that close attention because I was jumping for joy, so I don't know.
I would pay attention to it.
Anyway, long story short, there are a lot of good things to like here, despite me talking about his ankle rolling. There's a lot of good things to like here, and he actually got some national attention. He was Mark DeRosa. I don't know if you saw this, but Mark DeRosa on MLB Network broke down Adley and basically said that he gave the Orioles a lot of credit for the 2-part docuseries that they did. He called that out.
Which was really cool.
Which was really good.
The Orioles social media team historically has not been great. Well, they knocked it out of the park with Adley.
I think they knocked on the door next door. I think they
did. They brought some guys over. That's where their money's going, social media now.
Social media and entertainment.
Yeah.
But no, I think the other thing here is the fact that, Mark DeRosa, he said, and when you look at him side by side, swing pattern, mannerisms, excitement level behind the player, Buster Posey type vibes, right? The way that he can control a game, his defensive abilities, right? The IQ, the going out there and being able to show the excitement. Not all of it. I think he's got a little bit greater potential in some aspects, but the vibes are there, and I could see what DeRosa was saying.
I get it. I just hate player comparisons.
Comps. I get it.
We did that with Weeder as the Mauer with power thing, and I don't want to start that with Buster Posey. Let Adley Rutschman be the best Adley Rutschman that he can be, and I think that's going to be a very good player for a very long time with us.
Don't disagree.
And I think he's the total package, man. He's a great facilitator. Like he leads the staff very well. He's got a great eye at the plate. He can hit from both sides of the plate with power. So there's just a lot to like about this kid. It's fun. So enjoy it while it lasts, because this could be a guy that's here for the next decade plus. It could be the next franchise.
I tell you what, his family was enjoying it.
Yeah, they actually did a mic'd up with his sister.
I wonder where they got that from.
Yeah, right. But it was cool. Again, another one of those things that you're not typically privy to see, and you see how his sister and his mom and his dad reacted to the entire thing, and his agent, right? It's a wholesome moment. It's a family moment. It was good. Again, you see how long and how much time has gone into this moment, and it finally. And I
wish the only thing I wish they would have shown that they didn't show was what actually happened after that. They actually showed it the next day. Elias was actually right after that, was over there hugging his family.
That's awesome.
I really wish they would have gotten Josie and her reaction to talking with Elias and the family and everything. But yeah, it's definitely great to see. It's one of those things that you really, you're excited. It gets you excited, especially the media productions are getting better with the Orioles. I do think that there's some back and forth with the Ravens, the production team, what they're doing to really mimic some of the things they're doing, because you're starting to see it. You said you kept it out of the outline. I put it back in. I put it back in.
There we go.
We're gonna just go ahead and open Pandora's box. Everybody is split one way or the other. Some people are freaking out about it. Some people don't give a shit. The thoughts on the fact that he was issued number 35 to Mike Mussina. Now I'm gonna I don't agree with this. I'm gonna preface that. I don't agree with this. But the point that some people are making, that's the interesting fact that just needs to stop from the Orioles as an organization. Apparently, Mike Mussina is one of, if not the only Hall of Famer with 10 plus years with his original team that they did not retire his number.
Cool. That's fine. Here's the thing. I love Mike Mussina, and I respect Mike Mussina for what he did with us for those 10 plus years. He's one of the greatest pitchers of Orioles history, right? Mm-hmm. Here's the thing. He turned his back on this organization for more money and went to the competitor, the competition up north, New York.
Mm-hmm.
In his Hall of Fame, he didn't choose to use those 10 plus years to put the Orioles hat on in the Hall of Fame. He chose to go with a blank hat because he wanted to stay neutral with both teams. So if
you left on a sour note and you knew it.
Personally, if the Orioles were going to retire Mike Mussina's number, it would have happened a long time ago. Yeah. There weren't any plans to retire Mike Mussina's number. And that's evident by the 29,000 players that have worn 35 up until now. That was never a fucking big deal till all of a sudden Adley Rutschman, who's the number 1 overall prospect, comes up and wears it. Now Buster Olney wants to fucking pull receipts for people wearing the number 35 and it not being Mike Mussina. Buster Olney just has a hard on for making Oriole fans pissed off and talking shit about the Orioles. I'm done with Buster Olney. I'm done with talking about it. I'm done with 35. If Adley Rutschman wants to wear 35 for the next 20 years that he's going to be an Oriole, cool, let's do that. Respect to Mike Mussina, but if his number's never retired as an Oriole, I don't have any problem.
It really just becomes with Buster Olney anymore. To your point, anything with the Orioles, it's just clickbait at this point.
It is.
You're not writing anything valuable about what Adley's bringing to the table, what the team is doing. You're literally just trashing the organization. And I understand you may have had a bad fucking experience, but grow the fuck up, dude. It needs to stop.
I know somebody else has got his own feels on Buster
He's just
Olney
sitting over there pissed off now.
and this entire situation.
I'm not mad anymore. Like, just fuck Buster Olney. if you look at my tweets,
That's the daily tweet.
It's almost daily. Because even before the 35 shit, I was doing it because it's just something. It does get to a point where, like, okay, I can take a step back and breathe and not be emotional about it. You could be being clickbaity or, feeding into it because you realize maybe it's the smugness you get in it. Like, well, look, obviously if it's ticking guys off, if it gets people onto my page, I could get that point. But at some point, it becomes a little bit unprofessional that you literally only have something super negative to say about one team.
Right.
Even like it's not like everything he says about the Orioles or up the jockstrap of all these great teams or anything like that. It is to a point where, like, you did a couple weeks ago, you had that these 5 teams were on pace for 100. These 6 teams were on pace to lose 100. And the Orioles weren't on it.
Right.
And you kind of weren't talking about the Orioles because they were doing good. Then they had that skid, and we dropped to that, we could have had 100 losses going by, now we're projected for 100 losses. Got to bring it back up.
Right.
It's that kind of shit where it becomes unprofessional at some point.
I agree.
So that's my fuck Buster Olney thing. But to get back to the point, you left.
Yeah.
And I've always been a thing. Mussina was my favorite player. I mean, I played baseball. I loved baseball, but comparing my childhood to like now, or even my teenage years, like I wasn't as so focused on baseball.
Right.
But that was my favorite Oriole. Even over Cal or Raphael, any of those guys, stuff like that.
You didn't like Brady in the underwear commercials?
Nah, he's cool. It's cool. But, like, it is, though. That was, like, my young mind. He goes to New York when I'm on the precipice of starting to really care more. And it's like, you know what I mean? Like, you did your thing. That's fine. Like, whether you blame him or you blame the Orioles, it is what it is. You did your thing. But like you said, I mean, just harping more on what you said, I even respect the fact that you decided to go in neutral because no one's ever kind of done that thing.
Right.
And you didn't make a choice. And maybe that was really hard for him. I'll say that. But then in turn, if a guy like that makes that decision, then you as an outsider that has nothing to do with the Orioles franchise, with ownership or Mussina or his family or any of that bullshit, to me, at that point, you shut the fuck up.
Yep.
It didn't need it. That's where I said it becomes unprofessional. The kid fucking debuted. You shit on this team about how bad, like, they tanked and it's bad for baseball. Apparently, they're the only one that's bad for baseball. This kid, like, that's the fruition. Like, that is the point of all this thing for us fans that we looked at. That was the fruition. Whenever Adley came up, now we're
turning
good.
a corner.
Now we felt good. And it's just
We're on
like,
the other side of the hill.
That's the first thing you tweet at 9 a.m. on a Saturday. Like, go get a fucking life, dude.
Adit brings up another good point. He said, you would think since Mike Cuellar wore 35 before Mike Mussina, and he's in the Orioles Hall of Fame, Buster would reference him instead of before Mussina.
It's kind of hard, like, and just in general, like the numbers thing in general, like, it's hard to, like, maybe I'm
you can't retire every number.
Well, maybe I'm wrong. Like, I don't know if anyone's worn 10 since Adam. But it's going to be hard to, like, and not at some point, someone might wear 10.
Yeah.
At some point, someone's wearing 21. Someone's wearing 1. There's 3 players right there that, what
Orioles Hall of Famers.
That were, you know what I mean? Like, someone's going to wear that number. Someone's going to wear number 19, like Chris Davis. That was a joke. You know what I mean? Like, it's going to happen. It's just, at some point, it is just a number.
Yep.
Yeah.
It really is.
No,
That's how I feel
Don't
about
worry,
it as
the
well.
Yankees are about to run out of numbers.
Right. So I did want to ask you what, this obviously we're talking about this team in this stretch here, especially here recently in the past week. What are you seeing out of this team? Is there anything that comes to mind when you're seeing this team?
Fun. I think that these guys are playing together. Back in, what was it, 2012, when Manny Machado was coming up, and you saw the team just kind of click together.
The cohesiveness
of it, the fun. You got Mark Reynolds and the throwing the popcorn thing that they were doing in the dugout. Like it was like childhood things that made the game fun, right? And you see this team, they've got an energy about them. Like everybody has doubted this team since day one that they were going to be the bottom dwellers. They were going to be picking number 1 overall again. And here they are. In a much better position. I mean, they're not 500 or anything yet, but they're
surprising people.
They're surprising people. They're in every single game. I think the ERA and the bullpen is like 3rd in baseball right now. Like things that weren't expected of this team, they're achieving, and it's only going to get better as these pieces come up. That I think this team, if I'm defining them with a word, it's fun.
To me, there's 2 words that come to mind. Number 1 is grit. I really look at this team, and something has changed over the past few weeks, because this team, when they're down, they don't feel out.
Yeah.
And we've seen them come back in games now.
Yeah.
Right? We've seen them win games, 3 walk-offs. In situations where they were down by 3, in one game they were down by 4.
Right.
Right? Going into, I think, the 7th inning. So you're seeing the grit. They may be down, but they never feel like they're out. They always feel like they're one spark away.
Right.
And we're seeing that. And they have been. They've been getting close. Even those games, those 2-run games that we talked about, it's there. The other thing that I'm telling you right now that I see out of this team that is way better than it's been in the past, patience over this past week.
Yeah.
Over this past week, especially over this past weekend, just in the series against the Rays alone. What if I told you it was 14 walks?
Wow.
In 3 games.
That's pretty impressive. I mean, it doesn't surprise me because I've been watching it, and they have been a much more patient team at the plate.
But that's patience. It's
number.
Selective. You talked about Adley, right? With the 12 pitch in it, or the 12 pitch at bats. He's not the only one we're seeing that out of. If
Right.
you stack up all the pitchers in some of these games for some of these other teams, you're talking 150 plus pitches.
Right.
That's impressive. When you're making another team throw 150 plus pitches in a game, that's pretty good. That's what you want to see. That's what you want to do. So those are the 2 things for me that come out are grit and patience. You're saying you love the fun that they're having. Drew, James, any like words that if you were to come up with one word to describe what you're seeing, where would you go with it?
I just want to say I really can't, I'm excited about it. It's like being a kid at the ballpark, but I can't get into how you guys are because you guys are catchers and feel how alleys can feel. But it's like being a kid in the candy store.
Yeah.
It's starting to get all the kind of candy that you want and go home and eat it. And it's going to be here soon, and I can't wait, man. So.
It is for sure. Drew, what are you seeing? If you had one word to kind of sum up what this team is going through now or what they're showing, what would that one word be?
Magic.
Magic.
It does have the feel of that, especially like 2011, maybe not necessarily 2012.
Late 2011.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah, actually, you're right. Yeah, 2011. That makes more sense.
It really, it's a big combo of things. Like whether you want to use excuses like the new ballpark and everything. I know that's like the hot button, of course, when they play the home games, but their pitching is a whole lot better. And I mean, that was what we were saying like from the get-go. I mean, even when they sucked in like 2019, like they could hit, you know what I mean? They had timely hitting. They could hit well, but it was just God, that pit, like it's kind of hard.
Pitching was just awful.
You're down 8.
Yeah.
And it's the 2nd inning.
Right.
Like it's just like it's good to see that like the pitching isn't backing down. It isn't like if you had an issue, like you said, you had a situation, Watkins was getting roughed up, then gets hit in the arm, and now like all hell breaks loose. You think that's a 12-0 game,
right?
Like that's going to be, and it wasn't. So stuff like that is cool to see. And then you think of like the tune of like, dude, what is it, like the second worst, the second hardest strength of schedule? Like to be able to tell me, you're telling me they're 7 games under 500 with something like that,
Right.
It would blow my mind if you told me that 6 months ago.
Absolutely. I'm right there with you. So we did get some breaking news. Go ahead, James.
Yep, home run change just came out. Odor just hit a 3-run bomb.
Oh, shit.
Adley,
Let's go.
God damn it,
Let's
Odor.
go.
Hayes, I know Hayes had hit a home run already in the
But
inning.
Odor just hit a
Odor?
So, yeah, so it's
That
5-3,
bastard.
top of the 7th with their
That-
baby park.
With their
the baby
I'll be
park.
honest with you. I'm starting to change my tune a little bit on Odor because I was like ready to.
The last few weeks, he's really
He has.
He's come along.
And
I
he's
mean,
playing hard.
You know why?
I'm not going to expect him to be a Gold Glover at this point. Like, just be competent enough, not do the really dumb stuff. But if you keep showing it at the plate, and that's only going to get better, like you said, with having Rutschman in,
Right.
And if everyone else is healthy,
Takes
and
the pressure off
You got
of him.
Odor batting 6th or 7th. Like,
Right.
come on.
Absolutely.
You know what it is? To your point, he's loose and having fun with these
Exactly.
guys. They talked about I forget who it was, saying how infectious his smile is in the dugout and in the clubhouse.
Couldn't do that in New York.
John Means said he's been one of the best teammates that he's
Couldn't
had.
wear a beard in
Yeah.
New York.
Listen,
Yeah.
D chimes in. Who would have had Odor as clutch? You're absolutely right. Because, like I said, a couple weeks ago, I was ready to show him the door. I just, defensively, it seemed like he was a liability. And offensively, he just wasn't doing a whole lot. Well, then all of a sudden, that changed. And he became like this. He's got this clutch gene in him all of a sudden. He's been clutch with 2 of the walk-offs, although the one was just a misplay by the first baseman. But either way, he was the one that got the ball down the line. So I like what he's doing right now. Again, he's just a bridge gap for some of the infielders. We talk about guys coming up. If you haven't seen the Bowie starting infield right now, that's got future written all over it. Yeah, the infield right now at Bowie is 100% the future of this team, and it's coming. Speaking of that, man, let's talk a little bit about some of the pieces that might show face this year, right? Well, they're all names that we've talked about. Obviously the big one, the next one to fall probably would be Grayson Rodriguez. 22 years old now, 6'5", 220 pound. He's a right-handed pitcher. Right now, 9 games. He's 4-1, 2.7 ERA, 66 strikeouts, a .99 whip. Last outing the other night, 6 innings pitched, 4 hits, 2 runs, 1 walk, 9 Ks, 86 pitches, 64 strikes. I think right now there's a good chance that you might see him at the end of this month, during the holiday, or maybe early June, I think. June 3rd. June 3rd could be a predictable date.
If for T-shirt and Grayson's debut, if that was it, oh yeah, I'll be buying first base tickets.
So prior to hearing Elias, I probably would have agreed with you.
Yeah.
But Elias, in the interview that they were asking about Adley, they asked him about some of the other guys coming up, and he specifically talked about Grayson. And his words were that there's several factors to bringing him up. Number one, they think he needs to be built out into major league pitch counts and major league innings totals. I think they're working on that. 86 pitches is good, but with just a few outings ago, he was looking at an average of about 55 to 60. So you're working.
Yeah, but my point is, if he's throwing at 86 now at the AAA level, he can throw 86 at the major league level, and they can still keep him on this innings count.
100%. But that's where it comes down to, is they want to get more innings out of him. They do not want to have to shut him down come September. So
I get that. But he's going to be capped at that inning level, regardless if he's the major league level or the AAA level. It's going to be the same cap.
I agree. But then Elias made one more statement that makes me think it's not happening this year at all. If not, but September maybe. And that statement was, we'll take the reins off of him next year.
Yeah, I mean, next year they're not going to monitor his workload. That's what I would take that as, is like next year he's not going to have any restrictions. He's not going to have innings restriction, pitch count restrictions. He will be full-blown in the rotation day one. But I still believe that within the constraints of wanting to manage his workload this year, they can do that at the major league level just as easily as they do it at the AAA level. Okay. And if they really feel like they can compete, which they're showing they can compete, adding a Grayson Rodriguez to this rotation does nothing but better that and better your chances. So it just depends. That's my opinion. I think it happens sooner rather than later. I really do think it happens early June. We'll see.
I don't know that. I'll be honest with you, and this is me trying to be a realist.
Yeah, that's fine.
I don't know that you can call 7 games under 500 competing.
right now. That's what I'm saying. They're trending in the right direction. I'm not saying that they're going to be a playoff team this year. I'm not saying that at all. But we were talking about if this team could win 70 games this year, how much of an accomplishment that is when we were at 50 last year.
I think you got to wait to see where you're at the All-Star break before you even think about bringing him up. I understand what you're saying, but I just don't. Do I naturally want to see him up here? 100% in agreement with you. I want to see him up here. The difference is I think they're not going to rush him. This is the arm of the future.
Right.
Look what happens to some of these guys that we rush. One of which I'm going to skip ahead for a quick second is John Means. They just signed him to a 2-year, $5.5 million deal
to avoid arbitration.
Arbitration because he was looking for a little bit more than what they were going to give him. But the guy hasn't been able to stay healthy. He's been shut down every single year for a portion of time. So with these arms, this is the right-handed arm that is going to bring you your future.
I get that, but what I'm saying is if 1 + 1 is 2, that doesn't change at the AAA level or the major league level. All it does is give him experience at this level. So if your goal is he's capped at a hard 150 innings, remember a couple of years ago when it was more than a couple now, but Steven Strasburg came up for the Nationals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They had him on an innings cap, and it got towards the end of the year, but they were making a playoff run.
They made the playoffs, and he didn't play at all.
Exactly, yeah. And they held true to that. Right, but
they were also
the Orioles,
beginning of the year they were in competition. The Orioles are 7 games under 500.
Right. So my point is, if the innings cap is 150 innings, then who gives a shit when he stops pitching or how many innings you use him per game? You do that at the major league level to get him experience. One, still working with Adley, who is the catcher he's going to be throwing to for the next decade. And 2, working against major league hitting, major league competition, just like we're talking about with Kyle Bradish right now, working through his bumps, right?
I get it.
Grayson Rodriguez, listen, I understand he's 22 years old, but he's been a professional baseball player now for 4 years or 3.5 years. He needs to work at this level, and I just think it makes more sense for him to do it here than at AAA.
I get what you're saying. My whole point was going based off of what Elias was saying. I get what you're saying. I just don't think they're ready to rush him. They recognize they're the arm of the future, and he's the arm of the future, and you can control. If you can bring him up in September and extend him there, maybe he gets 1 or 2 starts in September, then fine. But if you rush him here and he's throwing too hard or loses confidence for whatever reason,
right?
I'd rather that happen in September where it's, hey, it's the end of the season, man. You're gassed. There's an excuse for it. You do it now. There's no excuse. There's no turning back if there's problems.
Go ahead, Drew.
So mine's what I'm going to say is more opinion than basing it off of fact or track records and stuff. My opinion is when you got a key piece like him, I almost think it's more a detriment to just keep throwing him in minor league games because at some point, okay, well, one way or the other, he's still pitching. Like, you're not going to, then all of a sudden start, maybe he's only throwing 3-inning games in Norfolk or something like that. So you're still getting all the work. You're still doing all the, you know what I mean? You're still playing, so you're still having all the strenuous activity.
Yeah.
At some point, doing stuff like that, in my opinion, it's opinion not, based off facts. Yeah. To me, I think you're more likely to fuck up a pitcher doing all those pitches at AAA for nothing. You could do your track record. You could do those pitches, pitching in the majors at the same clip, and it would feel less of a waste to me.
And look, there's no necessarily right answer to this. What I'm looking for me personally, again, I agree with you guys. I would love to see him here, but I also know that we have a history. Now, granted, that's a past history, but we have a history of bringing guys up, pitchers, young pitchers, too early, especially pitchers that can throw hard that wind up having arm problems. I can name multiple guys in the past 10 years.
I agree with you, but he's going to throw 98 mile an hour at AAA, or he's going to throw 98 mile an hour at the major league level. If again, 1 + 1 is 2, regardless of where it happens. If he's going to have an arm issue, it's going to happen at the major league level, or it's going to happen at AAA. There's nothing that dictates that it's going to happen at the major league level.
So there's a mental side to it too, right? When you're up at the major league level as a minor leaguer, you are trying to try your damnedest to stay there. right?
So-
Or you're at the AAA level and you're trying your damnedest to prove that he belongs there.
Not if they've had the conversation of, hey, we want to work you up. We know you're going to be there.
Not
you're
if they
gonna
had
be
the
our guy.
conversation of, hey, we don't have super high expectations. Just work through your qualms and work through your problems here at the major league level.
It doesn't.
It's you can flip it either way. I don't
not
think.
to be argumentative, but using John Means as an example to help you doesn't actually really help you because they didn't rush him along. They didn't know what they had. So he had arm problems just because it's kind of the nature of the beast of being a pitcher. You know what I mean? And maybe a little bit of the sticky stuff, like some people try to point out too. But to me, like, just to point out, like, Means and Grayson Rodriguez are kind of like completely different stratospheres because you didn't really expect anything out of Means. Then he became the focal point. Maybe he went too hard. Maybe you had the perfect.
Means was like a Bradish type
One
situation.
second. So Steven in the chat room says he's ready, yes, statistically, but not mentally. So let me know. Tell me what have you seen,
If you're not ready
heard?
mentally, then don't play.
Right.
Well,
what I'm saying, hold on. I want to know what makes you think that he's not ready mentally. Is it just because he's 22 and he's young? Because I haven't seen anything out of his behaviors. I haven't seen anything about his development. Anything that says that he's not ready mentally. So if you have an opinion on that, like, I'd like to hear it. That's all.
Elias did talk about the mechanics. He's talked about spring training and that something was not right. His mechanics were off in spring training is what he was saying.
But he's had his 9 starts or whatever he's had at AAA, and he's done pretty damn good with it.
Agreed.
Strikeouts last week.
Right.
Agreed. I'm trying to give you the devil's advocate side to this.
I know, and I'm rebuttaling. That's all.
No, and explain that. Like, I agree with you guys. I think there's validity to both sides. I get what you're saying, but what I feel like you're not factoring in is exactly what he's talking about. The mental anguish that comes with you have a bad outing at the major league level. Shit.
He says
You
arm
have a
issues
bad-
are common nowadays. Yes, arm issues are common nowadays.
You have a
but
bad
it can happen anyway.
You have a bad outing at the minor league level. The reason is you're working on things. You have a bad outing at the major league level. It's a lot harder to justify mentally to yourself, not to everybody else. Mentally to yourself that you're working on things because you think you're ready when you're there. When you get brought up to the show, you think you're ready.
Here's my thing: you can't live in fear of the what ifs, and you can't base everybody's trajectory based on past experience. Like, Grayson Rodriguez is his own pitcher. He is not John Means. He is not Dylan Bundy. He is not Jay Garrietta. He's not
Gossman.
He's not Gossman. He's not any of these guys.
Those two guys.
And to what you just said a couple of minutes ago, this is a completely different regime and a completely different developmental staff that's in place right now that these guys weren't privy to.
Has Elias given you anything not to trust him with?
Right. No, that's what I'm saying.
But that's my point. If he's saying he's not ready,
he didn't say that.
He literally made this statement. He needs to work on things, and we do not want to run into the situation of needing to shut him down in September due to fatigue.
Okay, but that didn't say that he wasn't going to do that through the major league level. They didn't say he wasn't coming up. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens.
Also, I just want to say we also have in our past where we said guys weren't ready, and we trade them, and then like a week later they're up on major league rosters, like Arizona did with the first baseman that said that he would never be
Goldschmidt?
No.
Arizona?
Yeah, he's the first baseman. He's still there now. And then Yastrzemski, they said he was too small. He wasn't going to do it.
Yeah.
He was killing it in San Francisco. He's still playing up there. There's a lot of guys that the Orioles have said in the past they weren't going to make it to the majors. We trade them next couple of weeks or after the trade, they're on their roster. I forget. Oh,
Christian Walker. That's right. Christian Walker. Good pull, Joe. Good name. Yeah, so here's the thing. If you want to talk about like other guys that are potentially coming up that I don't think are necessarily ready that people need to pump the brakes a little bit on, we can go to the next pitcher in line. That's going to be DL Hall, right? Kid's 23 years old. When you look at what he's done so far this year, he's pitched in 5 games. He's still coming back from his injury, right? He was out for a good portion of last year due to an arm injury. He's still working his way back. He's 0-1, 4.67 ERA, 17 innings pitched, 26 strikeouts, which excites you, 1.27 whip, which isn't great, but isn't terrible, right? It's about where he should be.
It's not 2.
Right. What you like, his fastball is averaging 97.8 mile an hour on Saturday. In perspective, the top left-handed pitcher starting in the major league averages 96.9, so he's higher than the best of the best for left-handed pitchers. Top right-handed pitcher is Garrett Cole, who we just saw yesterday, 97.6, so he's a little bit higher than Garrett Cole, right? I know velocity isn't the whole story. It's not everything. He's got a special arm. And if there's anybody that you want to kind of maybe take with a little bit of precaution, it might be this kid because he's already had the arm issue, right? So I think DL Hall will potentially be up at some point this year. I think he's more on the path of what you're talking about with Grayson, where we might not see him until September, maybe a late call up, to make a couple of starts at the end of the year. That might even be wishful thinking. It just depends on what his inning limit is too, because again, a guy coming back from an arm injury like that, I'm sure they're not letting him throw 90 plus pitches in a game, and I'm sure they're not going to let him throw over 150 innings in his first full year back from it.
No, and I'm not disagreeing with that. Again, it's when it comes to these guys, you got to take a step back and recognize what's good for long term and how far you're out you think you are, which is why I think, if you're one pitching piece away, then Grayson Rodriguez is logically the next step. But also, why push it, right? A DL Hall, same thing. This is a top of the rotation type pitcher, right? Kyle Bradish was not a top of the rotation type pitcher. He was a guy that benefits more from being here longer because you have to build Kyle Bradish's confidence a little bit more than you have to build Grayson's and DL's, because they've had such great experience at such a high level for such a long time. So for me, I look at guys like him and I agree with that. I think a late September call-up is the right thing for him. They didn't really talk about him in this situation, but I think it's one of those guys that, yes, his arm is good. It's the Orioles history. And I know it's a new regime, but it's the Orioles history with pitchers and trying things. And hopefully this new regime can jump over that hump. The concern is Means, but again, to your point, they didn't know what they had in Means.
Yeah,
Means was that Bradish-esque
just
type
like
pitcher.
how they're kind of exploring and what they've got in Zimmerman right now. Zimmerman's on a very similar path.
Zimmerman, Watkins, Wells. A lot of these guys are guys that I think they know what they have, but they recognize that these are guys that are back end of the rotation / long reliever type pitchers, and they're trying to see where they can fit in and where they can do them, make them go. So long term, we'll kind of see. Flipping to the offensive side of the ball, there's three names that you kind of look at and you kind of say, okay, how long before they come up? Yeah. So the first one being Kyle Stowers at 24.
By the way,
Stowers?
Home run tonight.
Nice.
Did he? Nice.
So 3 homer games.
Yeah.
Kid 6'3", 200, good build on him. Another left-handed hitting outfield option with power. To your point, when we were talking before, you mentioned you saw some good stuff Sunday.
Yeah, went 3 for 5 on Sunday with 3 home runs, 5 RBIs. To Drew's point, just hit another home run today. Second home run in that game was 111.2 mile per hour off the bat. It's insane. He's got 10 home runs total on the year, hitting just under 1,000 OPS.
For comparison, I think the top hit this year is like 117.
Yeah.
And the average is like 102.
Yeah, we're talking about a league that has Judge and freaking Stanton and these guys in it, and Mike Trout and all these guys, right? So
Shohei.
Kyle Stowers is a guy that, you and I don't know if you remember this, but we got to see him make his professional ball debut when we were doing the Aberdeen game from the booth. And
they were sitting next to Chris Hoyles.
We were sitting next to Chris Hoyles in there, right?
Yes, thank you.
And it was cool because
I'm surprised we caught anything out of that game because we were both gawking at Hoyles.
We were there, I think, for, was it Adley's first? No, whose first game was it? It was somebody else. He was the other draft piece. Was it Adley?
Was it Vavra?
No, it was like a top number 1 pick.
It wasn't Adley. I know that.
I don't remember who it was. I can't remember who we were there to see. Dalton Hoyles, Chris Hoyles' son, was also there playing.
He had just signed that day.
Right. But anyway, Kyle Stowers was somebody I remember saying, who the hell is this kid? He was a college bat that I didn't really hear a whole lot out of.
Good pop. I remember
think
that
he was like a 3rd or 4th round pick, but when I watched him, he had a little bit of everything, man. He had speed, he had grit, he had power, he had a good arm. Like, he looked like the total package, and now you're starting to see him develop into a potential real legit major league prospect. And I think he could be the next big bat, I would say, that would come up potentially in the next month or two, maybe around the All-Star break for the Orioles.
Yeah. Speaking, you have also promotions, right? So Cesar Prado got promoted this week from Aberdeen to Bowie. I mean, this guy's a middle infielder that's really showing and surprising a lot of people. You know, kind of he wasn't high on the draft, a lot of people's draft board. We wound up getting him, and ultimately
we just got him this past year in the what was it, the Dominican League?
Yeah.
Draft or what was that, Drew? That we picked up Preto? Was it the?
Thought it was the international
Draft.
Yeah, international draft.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
So with him right now, 340 in Aberdeen, he was batting 340, 381 OBP, a 1 OPS.
Yeah,
nice. 7 homers, 6 doubles, and 162 with runs. I can't even read the note.
it's all right. He's hitting the ball. He's
hitting good.
He's hitting very well. This is another guy who's got potential to play up the middle. We talked about like second base really being the only position, I think, from an infield standpoint that we don't have a lot of depth at. We don't have a ton of options. So this guy has the potential to be that guy. Like a couple other guys that could, that fill that role.
Yeah.
But it's good to see him making the next step to Bowie. Probably see him next year, I would think.
Yeah. So there's one more name that I think we all have been keeping our eye on, and it is Gunnar Henderson. So Gunnar right now in Bowie, in the month of May alone, is hitting 333, 467, and 632. He has 5 doubles, a triple, 7 home runs, 26 RBIs. He homered twice on Tuesday against, and again the following night. And then he's drawn 35 walks to 27 strikeouts.
Yeah.
He has definitely gotten, Elias did his whole media scrum where he's in the dugout talking to all the media people. And one of the things that he said is he thinks that the walk to strikeout ratio with the power that he has is very intriguing, right? The fact that this guy is drawing more walks than he's getting with Ks, and he's got the power with the 7 home runs. It's there. And to quote him, he said, "We took him at 17 years old out of a small part of Alabama, played a lot of basketball in high school, was going to be a sort of player development project when we got him, and has been, to me, like a flagship aspect of what our player development group is doing on the hitting side." That's a key right there. He's done a lot of work to improve his swing mechanics since he's been here, and he's rapidly physically and mentally maturing, which now that he's 20 years old, he's actually getting ready to turn 21, he's kind of turning into an adult. So it's awesome to see he's starting to have a great start in Double-A Bowie.
So what we're seeing with him is the same type of thing that we saw happen with Manny Machado and Jonathan Scope, where they went from boys to men literally in our minor league system. And you're starting to see him, like he said, mature and physically get bigger and stronger. It just naturally happens as you get a little bit older. But what's been impressive for me with him is he's done really well at each level. He'll go up to the next level, struggle for a couple of weeks, get things figured out, and then roll. Like he was crushing it down at Delmarva, got called up to Aberdeen, struggled for the first couple of weeks. Ryan and I actually went to a game where he was bad. He had struck out a couple of times. You could see it was getting to his head. He had made a couple of defensive blunders. He just didn't look very good. So you worried about him, but he worked through that and he started crushing it at Aberdeen. Now he's at Bowie and he's doing the same thing at Bowie. Got off to a slow start, but now he's crushing it. This kid's got a lot of potential for him too. You know me, I'm a big Mayo fan. It's gonna be a tough pull, man, when you get these two guys coming up to the major league level at some point, where they're gonna play. And we got Mountcastle here and all these other options. There's only so many corner infield positions. There's only so many corner outfield positions. It's going to be a good problem to have.
The interesting thing that Elias said is it is just Double-A, but the control of the strike zone, and he's showing it, is very exciting and very, very hopeful that he probably won't finish the year in Double-A, but he's got to stay healthy and all that good stuff was his exact comment. So that just tells you they're basically saying he keeps trending this way, we're likely to see him at Norfolk, which just increases the likelihood that if he stays healthy, he could be, if they want to see what they've got in him, and if he's able to make the jump, you could see an invite to expanded roster in September, up and down with a few different guys. I think you're going to see that in September. Some of these guys coming up just to see, get him the experience, get him the flow, because then going into spring training next year, they've had a taste.
Yeah.
And sometimes that taste drives some of these guys.
Similar feelings about the pitching staff, but whatever. So I want to get one more thing clear, and I wanted to get your guys' takes on this because a couple of years ago, when the Orioles were going through this, okay, we're going through a rebuild. They swallowed their pride. They admitted we're going through this rebuild process. They started putting the pieces in place by hiring Mike Elias, right? Mike Elias brings in Brandon Hyde as the manager. And I think we all kind of looked at it like, this guy doesn't have any managerial experience. He's been with the Cubs, and the Cubs kind of went through something similar, but he was a bench coach guy there, right? We kind of looked at it as like, this is the bridge the gap guy.
Yeah.
Right? This is the guy just to get it through the whole rebuild process. And then once we're feeling like we're over that hill, then we'll bring in a guy to really lead the charge. But I got to be honest with you. Like, the way I'm feeling about Brandon Hyde right now is I like what he's doing with this team. And I think the players like playing for Brandon Hyde. Even Jordan Lyles talked about it yesterday, how much like, hey, if I want to get one more out, all he tells is Brandon Hyde, like, hey, I want to make one more, I want to go through one more hitter, or I want to go through one more inning, right? And Brandon Hyde's become kind of that player's coach. He listens to his players, and I appreciate that. And I'll be honest with you, I attribute a lot of their success and a lot of the team chemistry and the clubhouse atmosphere to his leadership. Like, you can't just criticize somebody when things aren't going well and not praise when things are. You got to give them the credit that credit's due. So my question to you guys is, do you think Brandon Hyde could potentially be the right guy to lead this team beyond the next 2 or 3 seasons?
With the right additional coaching staff behind him, yes, and I think it might be there, right? Freddie Gonzalez is as your major league coach, basically your bench coach, right? Freddie Gonzalez has been there and been there at an elite level, at a high level. We've seen him compete, right? We've seen him have teams in competition. He knows what the playoffs look like. Really, so does Brandon Hyde. Brandon Hyde also has dealt with young players. Both guys have. Both guys have this experience, and it's kind of this, this mesh that I think, Brandon can say yes to those guys, but I think on the backside, this is just me making stuff up in my head, I think that Freddie balances him out and is able to say, I don't think that's a good idea. I think that's a good idea. Whatever it may be. Right. He's got the staff around him that he's able to trust and say, okay, let's do this. From a hitting standpoint, you brought in 2 of the guys that most of these guys know, right? Or at least one of the guys is a guy that they know that came out of the minor league system as a hitting coach. You bring him in, you let him get the experience of these guys. That's why these guys are being patient, just like they were in the minors. They didn't get to the majors and all of a sudden become patient. They were patient in the minors. It's something that we've been calling out. So I think it's possible. I need to see a little bit more. I need to see some of the decision making on the field just get a little bit better.
You're successfully avoiding answering the question.
No, I'm not.
Do you think that he is, based on what he's done so far and how he's kind of taken leadership of this team? Because I really did not have high expectations for him. I literally just thought he was a guy. He was a guy to fill a position that didn't cost the team a whole lot, had low expectations for him, but I think a lot of things have changed. And I really believe that if you jump ship and put somebody else in leadership in there, that could screw that chemistry up, that could screw that development up. I think he's a big part of it in a good way.
I'm going to, and I know I'm walking around the question, right? But my thing is, he's progressing as a leader and as a coach and as a manager, just as his players are progressing. And I think as long as both go on that same trajectory, yes, he is that right person. But if we have a falter, how does he handle that, right? If this team all of a sudden goes through a long losing streak, how does he handle it? How does he pull them out of adversity? I need to see that with these young guys first before I make that full decision. But if they're on the trajectory right now, yeah.
All right, Drew, what's your opinion on Hyder?
It's pretty tough for me. I am, especially like this year. If this year was going the way felt like last year, then I'd be like, whatever happened to him. Obviously, like when you have rebuilds like this, the guy that's there for the majority of the rebuild isn't the guy on the other end.
That was what we started with our expectations, right?
Looking at Houston, obviously that's the blueprint coming, with Elias. So, like, if you keep doing what he's been doing, like, I'm really impressed with how he's managed the bullpen.
Yeah.
How he's managed the pitchers in general. Like you said, giving guys like Lyles the leash, Zimmerman, like, you know what?
Yeah.
Like, it's your work out of it. I think you can get 6. I think you can get 7. You're staying out there. I like everything he's done with that. So, like, to me, like, if everything continues the way they're going and they win 70 games, let's as the benchmark, then it's hard for me to sit there and go like, now you need to move on from them, because then like, all right, what's the option that you're moving on to?
Right.
Like I personally don't really think Hyde is the one that will send him over the hump, but I also really don't have an opinion of an outsider guy. Like, how you bring in like and I'm not saying it's gonna be like him or someone like him. Like when you brought like a Gabe Kapler or something like in San Francisco, it looked like that sent them over the edge. They're back to being San Francisco that you're accustomed to. I don't know who that guy is, but if there is a guy like that, then I can't say no. But I think it'd be awesome if Buck Britton was the head manager when this thing is all over. So to your point of like not skipping a beat with the young players and messing with culture, because that's a guy that helps you build all these players up. You watch that video with Adley, it looks like there's a real personal relationship there.
Yeah.
That like everything he was saying, Adley could buy into, and then once he broke the Camden Yards nude, it was like, you know what I mean? That kind of thing. That's always been my opinion. Like that, if you're gonna have a seamless transition, it'd be Buck Britton, because I also just don't really know, like off the top of my head, like what outsider would
there's no formula to head coach. That's the problem.
Yeah.
There's no formula to manager that's gotten this continued success year after year after year. You can maybe point at a few different scenarios, but then those guys have wind up faltered down the road. So
I will give him credit. I think there's a lot less head scratching or negativity that you could feel towards Hyde this year, the way things have been going. Not just because that's obviously they look better on paper, the way that we watch the games, but just like there isn't really dumb decisions being made either.
So that's my point, right? Is when you think back, right? You can even relate this to the coaching staff. We know James isn't the biggest John Harbaugh fan, right? And he questions a lot of his in-game decisions and things like that, right? For me to want to make a move off of Hyder, I would have to have big question marks about his in-game coaching, his player development, how the players feel about him, the locker room. I have no questions about what he's done. He's done everything right? I think you're absolutely right that if they were going to make a change, I think Buck Britton needs to be top of the chart as far as consideration goes. But Brandon Hyde would have to do something to the negative to even have that conversation. That's my point, is that I just didn't think that I would be in a place where I would be pleasantly surprised with how Hyde has developed as a manager, considering he didn't have any management experience, and how he's improved year in and year out. And if that trajectory, to your point, continues to go in that direction, then there's no reason to make a change, because all of these guys seem to be really bought in.
The Band-Aid to this ball.
That's what we've always said, is that he's the Band-Aid. But
so why makes you feel like he's
still the Band-Aid?
Because he was brought in not to really. He didn't know. He didn't have a team to go to. It's basically, we're going to field a team for you. We want you to manage it until our guys down below are ready to come up. And I honestly think Buck Britton is the next guy in line, because he started in Delmarva, had a hell of a run down there. He gets promoted from Delmarva, which is like low A's,
to Bowie.
he got
promoted to Bowie first, and won in Bowie, and now he's in Norfolk and winning in Norfolk.
And he's with these guys. I think at the end of the day, if you're not getting, and I don't want not to say like he's back of the Buck Showalters, these name old guys. I want someone that knows these guys, and Buck is the ones that's been with these guys. So I honestly think Hyde is the Band-Aid. He's doing a great job, but at the end of the day, I honestly think there's more prospect to Britton being promoted and a likable guy. But even before Elias got in there, Britton was a likable guy in the organization at Delmarva.
But
so I think at the end of the day, it's going to be Buck.
Well, go ahead. I was going to say, stay on James for a second. I'm going to ask you, because you didn't answer. Just like you guys were saying, I walked around. You walked around the question that I asked you. No. What has he done to tell you he's not the guy?
Why would you be considering replacing him?
Because you got to realize what Hyde had when he got here wasn't doing anything. And then
forget that for a second. Forget what he was brought in originally for.
I understand that they bring him in here, but we all know that Elias is the guy is is running the puppets. Like, he's controlling.
Okay.
He knows what guys are going in there, who he's bringing up. He's the one that's really say, I'm the manager up top.
But we don't see the phone ringing all the time down in the dugout for him telling Hyde what to do.
I understand that. But I'm just saying he's controlling who's going to come up, who's not. And
so
Hyde
you're
is
so
just here
basically
to-
hold on.
he's
So I want to make
assistant-
sure that I'm on the same page with you, right? So what I'm hearing from you is Mike Elias built out a plan, and his plan was a progressional plan. His plan was Hyde is going to be a Band-Aid regardless of how good or bad he does.
Yeah.
And when the time comes for certain prospects to come up and we're ready to compete, we're then going to replace Hyde regardless of what the position of the team is and the organization is at the time.
Correct.
That's your stance on is that I don't care how good he's doing or what he's developed into, he's going to be replaced because that's always been the plan.
Elias has a plan, and I don't think Hyde is the full plan of it. I'm not saying he's doing a great job or a bad job. We're just caught in the moment of them actually doing well.
And that could be part of it.
Last year was we all said it was tiring. Every press conference, it was the same thing over and over again, and we understood that. But you can't keep on asking why we lose it, why is this, and all that. And he did a great job of handling it. But at the end of the day, Elias has a plan, and I think Hyde was just in here just to fill gap.
All right, Drew, I know you had a comment with it. Go ahead, Drew.
I lost my train of thought. No, no. I could, to give as kind of a benefit of the doubt to Hyde, say that we could find nothing negative, but both of us like Buck, and that would be our choice.
I think all of us like Buck.
okay,
No, nobody.
I don't want to force
we
Buck.
all, yeah. So you get to a point where, okay, yeah, we all like Hyde, but maybe we think Buck's the guy that takes him over the edge. You get to a point where if we're thinking it and he's progressed and he's helped along these prospects, there's only a matter of time before some young up-and-coming team is going to want him. There could be he could be the, you know what I mean? Like, at some
Agreed.
point,
So
it-
here's my
it
question.
Can
Let
get
me
you ahead though, but at some point,
let me present a scenario. Let me present a scenario.
We want him, not you.
Let me present a scenario. We said going into this year, if they got to 65 wins plus or got close to that 70 win plateau, that would be a really successful year this year compared to where they were last year, right? So let's say they hit that mark. Let's say they hit 70 wins this year. What has he done to lose his job at that point, right? Because my question was, is Hyde the guy to run this team for the next 2 to 3 years, right? So if you're saying the fear is Buck Britton could potentially be snagged by another team and we miss out on him, and now we're stuck with Hyde and we don't have that backup option. So your plan is, well, then we just cut ties with Hyde regardless of how successful this year is and put Buck Britton in place? That's your plan?
We don't know what Elias is thinking. Elias might not think they could
I'm
win
asking
70
you,
games.
not Elias. I'm asking
Okay,
you.
But I think
Yeah.
that 70 wins doesn't dictate Elias saying you keep your job because it's so cool you're doing it. He might not envision saying, "Oh, well, man, now I think that we're really actually over the edge. We're gonna revamp this thing in 2023 is the year." His goal still might be 2024, 2025. You know what I mean? Like his goal could still be
Further
here.
out.
He might not be pushing his goals forward just because Hyde had this magical year where he won 70 games.
So I think to that point, right? And I think this is where the Buck Britton thing is a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
And here's why I say that. Because no doubt, nobody in this room would disagree. Buck Britton is good at getting the best out of minor league talent. He's a good player developer at the minor league level. We've seen at times that doesn't always translate to the MLB level. You have to deal with much bigger egos. You got to go.
Yeah, but all these egos are egos that he's already dealt with at the minor league level. That's their point, is that these are guys that he's already gone through.
Not if you feel that you're one piece away and you go get a Carlos Correa next year. Now you got to balance.
Yeah, you're
this.
talking about a guy, not a team of guys.
But I get that. But it takes somebody who's dealt with it before, who's seen it before, which is the double-edged sword to it, right? I 100% agree. Would I love to see Buck Britton take this team at some point? Yes. I don't know that we can say with 100% surety that he's even the answer. Yes, he grew up with a lot of these guys. He can balance a lot of these guys. That's great. but can you control them and maintain them? It's one thing to develop somebody. It's another to maintain them and help them maintain that talent at a high elite level. MLB players that are in the MLB, 4A or not, you're in the MLB. Right? Some guys take it for granted, other guys don't. It's a balancing of a lot more egos, a lot more people, a lot more control, a lot more people chirping in your ear.
Brandon Hyde can handle like a Judge or Carlos Stanton.
Do I think Hyde could?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I disagree.
But you think Buck Britton could?
Then nobody can.
But my point, that's my point is, if you're going to say that Hyde
can't,
can't,
then that's finding someone who can. That's outside the thing.
So that's another
and
conversation,
Even then,
though.
that goes to other
Right.
conversations we had. The Yankees thought Aaron Boone was that guy, and they haven't gotten over the hump with Aaron Boone because
I
they thought he
agree.
related to the young players.
I agree.
There's no rhyme or reason to say that one guy is used to young players and he can handle the big money players.
Right.
Like,
Listen, I
Joe
agree with that.
Madden Joe Madden ain't winning playoff games with Shohei Ohtani.
I agree with that.
There's a
We were
reason
talking
you
about
don't-
two names. That's
So
the only reason I
here's
said
the only
that.
thing I'm going to say. There's a reason you don't see a lot of guys that I know of, and I could be wrong. There's a reason there's not a lot of major league managers that made the jump straight from being a minor league manager straight to being a major league manager. There's not many.
Yeah,
No,
there's
they usually-
I'm sorry, there's more players that go from being players to managers.
Well,
Correct.
there's that, and there's a
there
lot of-
has been success. There's been quote. I'm going to put
the normal
success with
progression.
that.
The normal progression for coaching is to go from a manager at the minor league level to a base coach at
Yeah.
the major league level, and then
Or
work
a
your
hitting
way.
coach,
or hitting
or-
Well, I
coach, or
understand,
bench
but
coach,
when you're the
yeah.
Yankees and you have a $500 million payroll, you could throw anybody in there and they think they're going to fucking win, and clearly it's not.
Yeah, but we will never be comparable to the Yankees from a roster
I
standpoint.
understand that, but
ever.
I think, like I said, when Elias came in here, he could clean house on all the managers. He decided to keep them. After keeping them, he got promoted several times really quick. Now he's at Norfolk doing his job with these young guys, and I think there's a pattern. Like Brandon Hyde.
I don't disagree with
Don't
you.
get me wrong, but I don't want what's his face from Anaheim. I don't want a popular name like Antonio Russo and all them. I want someone that's been with these guys. They know what they can do. Grow with them, and then you bring in these pieces that can finish to win this game. But
I agree
this
with
is where
you.
we're at.
I agree with you,
Hyde's
but-
going to be the cut because not like he's doing anything right. It's not like he's doing anything wrong. When he came here,
but he is doing
wasn't-
things right.
Well,
Because you're not questioning the things that he's
exactly,
doing.
but the way that Elias has a plan, it should all work, and he just got to sit back and put him in the right place. And
Okay.
I think
the reason I'm bringing up the conversation is because in the beginning, I think all of us agreed that there was no conversation to be had. Brandon Hyde was a
Stopgap.
Band-Aid. I think he has done more than enough in the last couple of years to merit another 2 or 3 years to see where things
So
go.
let me
in my
ask
opinion.
this for the two of you. Let me ask this: what would Brandon Hyde have to have this team do this year or next to warrant you saying he 100% should keep his job and try to take this team to the next level?
I personally think it's never been a plan. I think he's just been in here as a.
But I understand that. But that's why I'm asking you, what would he have to do? What would he have to do to change the plan?
There's no plan.
You just said that there's a plan.
Yeah, there's a plan for Elias that he has a thing.
But if
we didn't expect to win games when Brandon Hyde came in. So us winning games is because these guys are coming up that from our farm systems that are coming up are doing a thing. Like there's a plan for Elias, and I just don't think Hyde is part of it. He was just here to keep it together until all his guys and all his pieces are here, and Brandon Hyde's going to be the cut me. There was no Brandon Hyde couldn't go down. He could only go up. With all the stuff that's coming in here, he had to go up. So you go from not having 2 winning seasons to start winning games. And let's see at the end of the year what our record is. But we didn't expect much.
So let me throw this theory, like just random hypothetical out at you. Not going to happen. Let's say they go on an A's type run, and this team winds up being this year somehow pulls out an 85 or a 90 win season. You're still telling me that tomorrow, the day after the end of the season, you're going, we're ready for the next level. Bye, Brandon. Hello, Buck.
No, you're just dreaming that.
But I'm telling. That's why I'm trying to ask you.
I'm
What?
trying to find out where the limit is.
Saying,
What my question to you?
Limit. I'm just saying he's just here to hold.
But that's my point. Is you just kind of prove my point that you're not making sense to me.
I am making sense.
Because
he can win the World Series. He's not going to be the manager.
What?
He can win the World Series, and he
I don't think we have to worry about it. But
I'm not saying we're not going to win the World
Series.
Series. I'm just saying Elias has a plan.
His
for
stance
a certain
is,
guy.
Scott,
Once the team's ready to go, he's going to replace him.
His stance is the plan, and there's nothing that's going to deviate from the plan. And his plan is that Brandon Hyde is not here long term. That's all he's saying, regardless of what happens.
All right.
I just for me, if I'm driving to the ocean and I hit traffic and my GPS says, hey, change course, go this way to avoid traffic, I'm going that way to avoid traffic. That's my point. If the plan was that Brandon Hyde was going to be a Band-Aid, but wait a minute, this is going to be the better path right now because things change, I'm sticking with Hyder. He hasn't done anything to prove me.
A great leader can pivot and sometimes recognize when you need to pivot.
Well, just like we're watching these players develop, we are watching him develop as a coach and as a manager.
We have seen, I'm not just saying baseball, we have seen guys that have became interim coach because they fired their managers at the end of the year. I mean,
that's usually a very temporary
role.
Year
and win, and they still get rid of them because they want a name in there or they want a different guy. But
that's also a culture.
Matter of fact, it happened. Freddie was part of it in Atlanta. He won games with the Marlins, got fired, went to Atlanta. They barely gave him a shot, and he won games, and they still fired him.
Yeah.
It happened. It's a business.
We'll see.
When someone's in the top office and they want a certain guy or have a guy, it's going to be in place. It doesn't matter.
Go ahead, Drew. Round us out.
So your rebuttal to James and Elias sticking to his plans was if you hit traffic, you deviate. Okay, so we all thought Adley should have been up here a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Nope, they waited till he caught 3 games, gave him a day of rest, and he started him on Saturday. Didn't give a shit about Preakness, didn't give a shit that it was at 8 a.m. in the morning announced. That was their plan, was when he got to this milestone, he played. And granted, he would have started opening day roster. It's what everyone thinks. You don't want them to pivot off of what's going on with Grayson. Whatever they're picking with Grayson and DL, if Elias is sticking to that you're not playing this year and you're not playing this year, he didn't deviate off of the traffic jam saying, God damn, let's watch these guys play now because they're still working on the arms there. If they're working on it in Norfolk, they can work on it in Baltimore.
But you haven't seen a reason to pivot on those yet.
But that is also our point. Like if Elias has kept these milestones with these players the same way, if his mindset is,
Fair enough.
Just don't think Hyde is enough, they're not going to the playoffs. They're not winning the World Series. I know we threw that out as astronomical shit, but it's not happening.
So, but
70 wins should not be sitting there just automatically thinking, now there should be the traffic jam. 70 wins was a traffic jam. Well, now you can't pivot because there's a traffic jam.
Okay, so then I'm going to propose the same question to you that I did to James. What would it take for you to say, okay, I'm really impressed by what Hyde has done, and maybe we should give him a shot?
Literally
with this
making
team.
The playoffs, but anybody is going to say
what's the timeline on that? Are you saying that Hyde's done after this year no matter what?
I never even said it was done after this year. I just said I don't think he's the one to take us over the edge. Because of what I said, Elias isn't sitting there saying 2022 is now we're taking the corner. Elias could be thinking 2024 is that corner.
Right. I get what you're saying.
2023 is not going to prove.
I get what you're saying, but
now I have this guy in mind. I think he can make 2023 be what I think it's going to be.
Here's my thing.
That's
right?
who I want.
Here's my thing. We all talked about like wanting to see progression with this team, and last year they won 50 something games, right? So if this year they hit 70 wins, okay, next year 2023.
He is signed, by the way. Good point, Steven.
2023.
Hey guys,
they hit 500. Now they've got 81 wins. Then the next year, which is the year that you're saying could be Elias's plan, is 2024. Now they're talking about potentially in 2024 going after a playoff run, right? Because in 2023, they just showed progression. They went from 50 to 70 to now 81, and we're a 500 team in those last 2 years, right? 3 years that they've progressed. You're saying that you think that he would still stick to his plan and say, hey, I know that you've won 20 plus games this year and you won 10 plus games last year, but sorry, 2024 was always going to be your deadline. We're moving on to somebody else.
It might not be comparable. It might not even be a good rebuttal. But my rebuttal would be the Yankees did it with Girardi. They were making playoffs. They didn't get over that edge. They thought Aaron Boone would do it. It didn't work.
But they were already making playoffs. There's a difference between making playoffs and progressing to
playoffs. It's not a good
playoffs.
rebuttal, but at some point, if you really don't think that guy gets you over the hump, it doesn't matter if he did good and progressed at all this time. If you really think, like, I'm sorry, James Carusi is going to be my fucking manager that gives me the World Series, it doesn't matter what you've done. It becomes a business. I don't care that I
did it.
I don't care that you get it.
No, but
just
nothing-
Does he bring AJ Hinchen in 2024?
No.
Nothing-
He's already signed.
Yeah, so nothing
You're not allowed
about
to bang trash
He's
cans
with
anymore.
Detroit.
Carlos Beltran.
I
He's
know.
got the Astros ties. Who knows? He could be
But
an
like I
option.
said, the Dodgers did it. They
Yeah.
had a stacked team. Were supposed to win, and then
We'll
they get to
revisit this, 'cause
playoffs,
it's-
and
it's an
they
interesting
fired
conversation.
what's-his-face, And they used their bench coach.
We'll revisit this. Like I said, it was an interesting conversation because honestly, I never thought we would be in this position this early, and I never thought I'd be this pleasantly surprised with what Hyde's done so far.
Yeah.
No rules. No boundaries. 2 topics. 30 seconds each. It's time for the 2-minute warning.
All right, fellas, it's time for the 2-minute warning. You know, I threw that Brandon Hyde question in there as like, let's just close out the segment for like 2 or 3 minutes. We'll go through this real quick. That turned into like 30 minutes long. Jesus Christ.
You should have put it, but you should have put it in the 2-minute warning so it would have been a buffer time.
Yeah, right. I didn't think it would go that long.
Even Ryan liked the O segment.
Best segment ever. There you go.
Now, Ryan cannot talk about the Orioles anymore. He came in from outside of my house and said, did Adley have a season-ending injury yet? Stay out of the Orioles segment there.
Fuck you, Ryan.
Yeah, I had to deal with Ryan on Saturday coming in now. Oh, well, he struck out? That sounds normal.
Appreciate it, Troy. Appreciate it. Thanks. It's courtesy of Fred over here.
Got the home run chains. All right, Drew, time for the 2-minute warning. Hit us with the first one.
I got the button.
Yeah, so Nick Saban making headlines. What's your take on Nick Saban calling out schools and coaches, names in general, in retaliation to NIL deals? Is that a good point, or is it stay in your lane because you're the haves, not the have-nots?
For me, I look at this and it was strategic by him. Who is he in front of? Look at his audience. His audience was the people that are the boosters, the people that give money, and the community and the business owners. He was trying to get them to say, we're losing because you guys aren't taking it on. You're taking me for granted as a coach that people want to come play for me. That's great, but I can't compete with money. That's what he was saying. I think it was a good point. You got to recognize his audience and who he was talking to.
Listen, Nick Saban's doesn't need to worry about NIL deals, right? He's the head coach of Alabama. He's one of the greatest coaches in all time. Like, he is going to draw kids to that school just based on how ready that they'll be for the NFL. He's got to be the least coach in college football to have to worry about NIL deals taking prospects away from him, because he's got 4 and 5 deep that could play right away.
I sent you guys a picture of John Mean, Spencer Watkins, and Bruce Zimmerman, and Keegan Aiken playing Settlers of Catan. You got your money on who won that game and why? I love it.
I'm gonna go with Bruce Zimmerman because he was one of the only guys that was sitting there that wasn't injured. Obviously Keegan Aiken wasn't, but I think he's got to have some competition. He seems like a smart kid.
This is an interesting one. I did see the picture. It was pretty cool to see that those guys were playing. I just learned how to play Settlers Catan just over the last couple of years.
They were drinking beers at 11:30.
Yeah, I think it's cool.
And vaping.
If I had to pick one and I think I'd put my money on it to win, I think it'd be John Means. And I say that because he's had a lot of time to figure out strategy to how to play Settlers of Catan. Some of these other guys, they're pitching. They're doing things with the team. It's cool to see John Means. I will say this. It's cool to see John Means still hanging out with the team, still coming to the clubhouse. He did really well in the booth, too. I think he's got a career with that later on when his days are done. But I think if I'm putting my money on anybody to win that game, it's John Means, in my opinion.
Look at you ending right on time.
Man. I had to pace that out right.
Hey, I did the intro, the sponsor read.
You did.
Your turn to do the outro, buddy.
All right, man. Well, we appreciate you guys tuning in as always. It was a good show. We had a lot to talk about with the Ravens. We're going to have a lot to talk about next week as well.
Stay tuned for last call.
Next week is kind of a holiday edition. We'll see if Tuesday works schedule-wise for everybody. So we'll put a post out, let you know if we're going live Tuesday or maybe Wednesday of next week. Let you know for sure. Appreciate you guys tuning in as always. Make sure you're following us on all the social media networks. If you haven't done so yet, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Turn on your notifications so that way you get all of our live updates. If you're on Facebook, hit that like button. If you're on the audio podcast and you're listening on Apple, write us a review, man. It goes a long way with getting us found and having other people get a chance to listen to us and check out the content. We will be back again next week. I'll keep you informed as to when. For myself, Scott, James, Drew, Ryan, who's at home with the kiddos, we'll see you guys next week. See ya.
It's last call for alcohol.
It's time for the after party.
Oh, man. Appreciate it, Troy. Troy says sick show.
Appreciate it, Troy. Good to see you in the chat room, man. I know you usually end up catching these things on the record.
Yeah. Shout out to you guys that have been commenting, a bunch of comments. We actually, James found a new feature in our
This
comment
is going
section.
to make the after hours a game changer, man.
And social media shout out, too.
So we can actually pin questions now, which is great. Because sometimes I know your guys' comments get lost in all the chat and everything. Well, James has the ability to save those now for the good ones.
Steve Moan or whatever got me to think of it because he said something. I wrote it down, but then I just like, what's it star for? I clicked on it. And
that's awesome.
So first off, let's just start out with the easy one. Scott, Fred, peanut M&Ms or Reese's?
Oh, man. So if I'm eating them just out of a bag, peanut M&Ms.
Oh, I gotta go Reese's.
I'm fat, right? So they go they go more. They fill me more than Reese's would. I'd have to eat a whole lot of Reese's to be full.
Have you ever been able to stop eating a Reese's without finishing the bag?
No, but that's my point. I want another bag.
Oh, yeah, by the way.
Right? So M&Ms, if I have one bag, I'm going to get more full on because of the peanuts.
I don't
love
know.
them. They're good.
You like nuts? I got it.
This point, but it's definitely like I just ate 2 Reese's peanut butter cups, so I'm not going to downplay
Peanut butter cup.
peanut butter cup. But man, Reese's Pieces is way better than peanut butter cups.
Yeah.
I like Reese's.
I mean, listen, I love them both.
I don't like M&Ms in general.
But
I'd
see,
rather
so
have
all right.
Reese's.
So here's the thing. That's why I said if depending if we're eating them out of the bag. So if I'm eating them on like an ice cream sundae, 100% it's Reese's. Like, well, there's no even question about it. But I'm just talking about out of a bag. I think peanut M&Ms.
Who the fuck eats peanut M&Ms on an ice cream sundae?
I do.
I mean, I've seen it happen. Friendlies, yeah.
They have a Sunday.
Did you not go to Friendlies as a
It's called
kid?
an M&M sundae, not a peanut M&M
I
sundae.
went
You
to
were
Friendly's and I always
sheltered.
had Reese's Pieces
No,
on my
they have
Friendly
Reese's
Sundays.
Pieces.
You were sheltered.
Yeah.
Reese's Pieces are great on
Yeah.
ice cream, but
And
they're great
I
overall.
used to bring them back.
No, I said peanut M. I said who the fuck eats peanut M&Ms on them?
I've seen them in Friendlies. All right, so what's the next question? What do we got here?
All right,
bring
so
up the next
Steve's
one.
first question was, hey guys.
Well, you got to pull it up on the thing so we can have it on the.
I can't. I had to write this one down.
Before you got it. Okay.
Before he
So
found
it
that.
says, hey guys, Steve from Glen Burnie. Just want to know when will the Ravens start signing their draft picks? And we know like a couple have been signed. I think 3 of
Yeah.
them. But he said, love the context. Keep up with the great work. That was his first comment.
Appreciate it, man. I think you'll see the rookie contracts start falling off one by one over the next week or so because they're going to want to get these guys in OTAs as quickly as possible because they need as much time. If there's anybody that needs to be at OTAs, it doesn't need to be the veterans. It doesn't need to be the Calais Campbells. It doesn't even need to be Lamar Jackson. It doesn't need to be the veteran guys.
First and second year players.
It needs to be the guys that are bubble guys that need to prove themselves, and it needs to be guys that are new to the system, new free agents and OTAs and rookies. So I think they'll get these rookie contracts done pretty quickly.
I think a week is a little promising. I would say by the end of July or by the end of June, they're done.
End of June.
End of June.
Nah, they'll be done. I would think.
You think?
Yeah, I think they'll be done in the next week to 2 weeks at max.
Okay.
All of them will be signed.
All right.
And then the next one is. Could Grayson come up to make the start on Friday on the road, or would you rather see him debut on the road or at home, or does it depend on the matchup?
So, Adit, with a great comment as always. Adit, very knowledgeable with the Orioles. Appreciate your content and what you put out there, too, and appreciate you chiming in. Listen, Scott and I are going to be on different ends of this because Scott actually thinks that he's not going to be here until later in the year, probably September. I do believe that he will come up. I don't know if it's Friday. I think from a marketing standpoint, starting at home makes more sense than on the road. But we've seen they don't give two shits apparently about marketing, and maybe they have this plan that is put in place and nobody's going to deviate from said plan regardless of what happens.
Like Grayson in September.
So I don't know. I think it'll happen soon. I think it'll happen over the next couple of weeks. Friday's a little advantageous. I think it's a little early, but we'll see. I'd be excited if he came up Friday.
I would love to see him come up. I just don't think they're going to do it. I think we would have to wait to see what this team is doing at the All-Star break before he comes up. That's just how I feel. The vibe that I was getting from Elias was talking about.
I just don't think nobody expects this team to even be close to be in competition for a wild card spot or in playoff contention. So looking at things and evaluating things after the All-Star break to me means nothing because there's nothing that's going to change with the landscape of what this team's going to do before or after the All-Star game. So it's more so, all right, if we know he's got 50 innings pitched right, I'm just throwing numbers out. If we know he's got 50 innings pitched right now and our innings cap is 150 innings, that means he's got 100 innings left this year. Do we want to see all 100 at the major league level, or do we want to see 50 at the major league level? And that's going to be the difference in when they bring him up. That's my opinion. I think they're preferring to see more of those innings at the major league level than AAA, especially with the way things are going right now with him.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah. What's the next one, James?
There's nothing else really, but I just want to say, the Orioles don't really give a fuck when he brings him up because I remember because I have his their car ticket stubs. Gausman started in Toronto.
Different regime.
I understand that, but I'm just saying Gausman was on the road in Toronto, and Bundy made his appearance in Boston.
Yeah.
So I think when they want to bring a guy up and they think he's ready or it's at that number where we can save money and be able to keep him for an extra year, that's when you'll see them come up.
What do you think, Drew? Do you think when they bring Grayson Rodriguez up, do you think home versus away will play a factor in when? Do you think the matchup is more critical as to who they're playing and what pitcher they're going against?
I think for me, it's a little easier to go with their plan. Now listen, you laugh because he's a pitcher.
That's just because we've been talking about don't deviate from the plan.
No, but I'm saying they'll stick to the plans because he's a pitcher. Because it isn't okay, June 3rd. All right, but if he pitched on June 1st, you know what I mean? If they're not gonna if he's pitching on June 1st, they're not gonna scrub his start, and then all of a sudden
they did it with Bradish,
right?
I don't think it's happening with Grayson. You've already even like you said, but when you compare pitchers, they were way more willing to push Bradish out there and learn on the fly than they would Grayson.
Bradish also didn't have the innings concerns.
But that doesn't prove my point that they wouldn't just automatically just throw him up to the majors.
Well, that was my point of holding off and why they're letting Grayson develop longer in the minors because the minors are where you develop things.
But there's a difference between waiting from June 1st or June 15th or April. Like, that's not really like they're not gonna like if they feel like he's ready on June 15th, they're not just gonna hold off because of April. Like they would want to start on. I just
don't get the vibe from what Elias was talking about. I don't get the vibe that they think he's ready to be at the major league level tomorrow. If you listen, did anybody listen to his comments?
I did.
No, I got a life.
I did.
I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
Ouch. Jesus.
I wasn't in quarantine.
It was the other day.
On a flight from Vegas.
Anyway, no, it was just the other day after Adley's debut. It was actually it was Sunday. So it was the fact that he was talking about all this stuff. If you haven't watched it, go watch it because just his tone, it was a little bit different talking about Grayson than it was Adley. He still, had the little bit of excitement, but it didn't give me vibes that he's coming up anytime soon. I didn't get that vibe.
I think you're trying to keep everybody checked just because Adley's up here doesn't mean they're fucking.
He was trying to keep us in check about Adley. We just refuse to listen to
The
him.
more important question here comes from Googs, and it's directed to you, Drew. It says, Drew, scale of 1 to 10, how much do you hate Buster Olney?
Yeah, he showed it to me
12.
halfway through the show. I was like, man. And then I wasn't even going to worry about trying to answer that because I thought we were going to and then we started talking about Olney anyway.
That was crazy.
I just. Like you said, you're feeding into him at some point. I don't actually follow him, but all the Orioles Twitter, whenever you comment on it, it's there and he pops up on the ratio type of thing. So Googs, it's a scale of 10. The guy, God, go away. At some point it does become unprofessional.
Right.
I'm not saying the only articles he writes are about the Orioles. But it seems to be the ones that are highlighted.
Every time he writes an article about the Orioles, it's always negative.
It's
it seems
way more
recently,
in depth negativity. The Reds were horrible. Their owner or the owner's son, who has an official capacity, is literally on opening day or their home opener saying yeah, our season's gonna suck if you don't like it. Go home and watch something else.
All right, let's.
And not a peep from Buster Olney, but then this team has stayed their course, and they're turning a corner at least a little bit, and you still can't get out of your way of
like I said, he's got a hard one for us.
Aren't working with the Sun anymore. They chastise him sometimes.
It's so ridiculous.
Real quick, Frank, do we want to ask Scott take his wins loss real quick, or you want to wait, or just let him?
I mean, we can do it now if you want to.
I'll read it off. I got the schedule right here.
All right, go ahead. Go down it one at a time.
Week 1 is New York Jets at the Jets.
Win.
Okay. Week 2 at home with Miami.
Win.
Week 3 at New England.
At New England?
Yeah.
I'll go win, but that's going to be a close game.
Okay.
It's a loss.
Week 4, Buffalo at home.
Loss.
All right. Next game, Cincinnati.
You're welcome, Buffalo Chuck.
Cincinnati at home.
Cincinnati at home, fans are going to show out. I think it's going to be a tight game. As long as we're healthy, that'll be a win.
Okay. Next game is New York Giants at New York.
Win.
All right. Next game is Cleveland at home.
Win.
All right. Tampa Bay in Tampa. It's a Thursday night game.
Loss.
Loss, okay. All right. Next week, we're in New Orleans. It's Monday night.
Win.
It's a win, okay. All right. We have a bye. Then next game is Carolina at home.
Win.
That's a win. All right. Next game is Jacksonville in Jacksonville.
Win. It's not Jacksonville in England.
No.
Thank God.
At home.
Yeah.
Never again.
At home in Denver.
At home in
At
Denver.
home in Denver.
Denver in playing us at home.
Denver at home. We're taking on Denver at home.
Yeah.
Win.
Whoa.
O's Yanks extra innings. Thanks, Paul. Appreciate it. Craig, we'll get your question in here in a second.
All right.
What was his question? I guess the one above it.
Yeah.
Ravens at Pittsburgh.
Win.
All All right. At Cleveland.
Win.
At Atlanta.
Win.
At Pittsburgh. At home.
Against
playing
Pittsburgh. Win.
Man. And at Cincinnati.
I said we lose the home game, right?
No,
You said we win.
Win the home game against Cincy.
Yeah.
We'll lose the away game. We'll be 1-1.
I think
against
we're
them.
basically the same fucking record.
So
Him and I.
no, he has the most. He has 14-3.
Okay, I was 13-4. Holy shit!
Way to sound like
14-3,
Drew.
13-4, 12-5, 11-6. We're all literally off by one. Yeah, it's hilarious.
We're gonna save this.
So I'll let you answer this, being that you're the Top Gun fan. You named a dog after him. So
2 dogs.
two dogs, right? Going on a Top Gun logic, if Lamar is Maverick, who is Iceman on the team? So I kind of thought about it for a second, right? I want to let you to answer, but you got to put your mindset in like who's Iceman and what Iceman's character
Iceman
was,
hated
right?
Maverick. Nobody
Iceman hated Maverick, right? So this is a tough question because it wasn't until the end that they respected each other and that they embraced each other as each other's wingman. So who is this guy?
Greg Roman.
Greg Roman. I was really about to say. That's the
The only answer I can come on. All right, so
That's the only one.
Greg Roman's my answer. If you're going to make me pick a player,
No, I think Greg Roman's the best fit because I didn't even go there
was
with
who's Merlin?
it. Merlin. He's the emotional guy. That had to have been Hollywood.
Hey,
that emotional cried and
last year, J.K. Dobbins was Goose.
Oh, by the way, I broke his heart the other day when
died.
we were watching the Bradish debut. I looked at him and said, I know Scott loves Top Gun. What's your opinions? Oh, yeah, I fucking love it. I was like, yeah, I don't think it's that good.
Yeah.
I really do.
I lost a lot of your respect for
I watched it again
your
on Netflix,
movie
and I just-
opinions.
It's 280s for me. And then Kelly McGill.
That's the age gap.
I don't
That's the age gap because it's funny because
Him and I are the same fucking age.
but
younger than
it's
me.
you know what's funny though is
Actually,
like
I am like by a few months. I think we
yeah.
figured out.
so I'm a fan of a lot of 80s movies, but I hadn't watched a lot of them in a while and friend of mine that I was talking to or whatever that hadn't seen a lot of these movies were like, oh, you got to watch this movie. It's so like, for example, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, right? I'm like, I love that movie. You got to watch it, right? And then we sit down to watch it, and I'm like, Jesus, this movie, like to somebody who is watching it for the first time at 30-something years old in 2022, I'm like,
Well, it's just like
Jesus Christ,
so
this is terrible.
The other thing that
But it
people
was
look
so
at
good.
a movie that and I'm assuming because you like that, you like that style. Breakfast Club.
Yeah, I love Breakfast Club.
Breakfast Club.
Today, you either
It's
hate it or
awful.
you love it.
Right.
Today, people hate it.
Hey,
And
Fred, you see
Yeah.
what Ryan said?
What did Ryan say?
100% going to theaters for it. Oh, for the new Top Gun.
Yeah.
Now, the new Top Gun, from what I'm hearing, is like it is really good, and you got to see it in theaters because apparently, if you see it like in IMAX or one of those real high quality theaters,
Yeah.
like
Dolby
they'll-
Digital.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
I've heard nothing but like good things.
that's a
especially if you
movie.
watch
Even
it in
as much,
theaters.
even if you don't like Tom Cruise and all the weirdness that he is with the Scientology and all that shit, like that's a classic. I don't care
But
unless you're
you
Drew,
know what I
you're
found
weird,
out?
but
I didn't
No,
know.
but-
I didn't know.
It's the
hold on.
cheesy-ness with the
Number
music
one-
kind of playing like
Number one, Kelly has never seen Top Gun and she won't watch it. I put it on and she just walks away. I'm like, you say you never watched it. Won't you sit down and watch it with me? So she has never seen Top Gun. And second off, I didn't know Tom Cruise knew how to fly planes. I watched that. Who's that English
he
guy?
does everything. On
No,
it. He
but who's
does
that English
everything.
guy that has a
yeah,
show?
his name's in the title three fucking times.
Who's that name that
Tom
guy
Cruise,
that
Maverick,
does-
Top Gun.
that has his own late night show? He's English.
James
Oh,
Corden. He flew with.
Flew with like a private
Cruise
plane.
actually was flying a jet.
old fighter plane, and then a real fighter jet.
Wow.
They took him up there. He's like,
Yeah, Cruise
was
went
great.
all
I didn't
Cruise
know
went
that.
all out for this movie because he wanted the shots to be true. Like all of the actors were forced. It was, if you're taking this role, you have to be the one. There were no stunt doubles for the G's that they were pulling. What you see in the movie is apparently legit them
damn,
experiencing.
Ryan's pumped about this movie.
First
I
movie
didn't
without
say it
kids
was a
in probably
terrible
6
movie. I
years.
just
Holy
don't
shit,
love
that's
it. Like,
impressive.
I didn't know he was that big of a
I
Top
told,
Gun
I told
fan.
you, Fred.
The planes
Yeah.
part of
We
it
gotta
is
go, man.
really
We'll make it
amazing
happen.
for that time frame. Like, so you can only imagine what it's going to be like with this new movie.
You see
Right.
my love
How we
and
can
you
do
rattle my
I
brain.
just- some of the other stuff. I don't hate it. I just don't.
I just hope
I can't
because
sit there and watch it
like
religiously. There's movies where I can watch religiously.
all
and I
these
ain't.
movies, most of these movies, I can't think of one off the top of my head right now that they bring back from an older movie that was in the 80s or 90s that they
Yeah.
do a second version of it years
What
and
about
years later.
Ghostbusters?
They
Well-
never do well.
What about Ghostbusters?
Twice they failed.
The girl
No,
one,
not the girl. I'm talking
I
about
heard the
newest
latest
one.
one sucked too.
No, the latest one was really.
I haven't
good.
seen it yet.
is that the one where they bring what's his
He-
name back at the end? He
as a
was like
ghost.
dead as a ghost.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did see that.
yeah.
It was pretty good. It wasn't terrible.
Yeah, it was.
It was pretty good.
You know, for being so
Yeah, that's
long.
a good one. But
They're coming out.
It was very different.
The problem is they're running out of idea. Like I just saw yesterday, they're coming out. Did you ever see the movie Law Abiding Citizen?
Law abiding citizen, yeah. So
Coming out with a sequel.
Why?
okay, but that's not 20 years of a difference in time.
but there's no
We're
point.
talking
It
about
just
80s
ended.
and 90s movies that are coming out.
Still
because-
15 years.
I know, it's an age gap, but that was such a good
Why do you even
movie.
need to have a sequel to that?
That was such a good movie, and the way it ended, like, yeah, why would you come out with a sequel on that? I guess just because it did so well in sales or whatever. But
Why are there sequels to anything?
that's true. All right, we've been over here a long time, so I'm heading out. I will see you guys
Steven
next
Seaver
week.
says, "Hey,
Steven,
What's up, Steven?
better late than ever.
He's working at Epcot now.
We'll see you guys.